Welcome to Marvel Movie Talk. As always, I am Christian Bladt. Very excited to have our returning champion, but I won't tell them which one of them is the champion. We have two returning members of our panel. The great Eric Conner. How are you, sir?
Covered in dog noise right now. Covered.
Covered.
So apologies.
You have a Phil Spector wall of sound.
Wall of bark. But
Canine.
it's good to see both of you. Yes.
And the even greater, and some would say greatest, Katie Hampton. Katie, thank you for being here.
Of course. Forgive me, looking down at my phone, so I'm just trying to post so everybody can come on in and talk. What's up, Daniel?
You started talking about that as soon as I hit go live,
exactly.
And that's when I remembered, oh yeah, I didn't post. So you post, I'll repost. And we've already got some friends here, which is something that we can always count on because our buddy Daniel Drew, I love the comic character, and this show has been a decent continuation of her MCU character. I still don't like the release schedule and would have liked 12 eps instead, but I'm excited for tomorrow. That's great. We are getting the other 3 episodes tomorrow. We will remind everyone at the end. We will be covering it Friday the 11th. And excited to have the chance to talk about the first 3 here. Also with us is our friend Nate Miller. Nate, great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Hey, good to see you guys.
We're very slow starting the party, so it was like it was actually perfect timing. And look, when I see somebody that I don't know in the chat and asks "What's up, y'all?" I'm going to say "What's up, y'all" to Javi. And the man whose middle name is "What's up, y'all" is David. What's up, y'all? Brody. Hello, sir. How are you?
What's up, y'all? My apologies for being late. I ended up in a Google Meet session from a link I clicked on that you sent me. So.
Here's the thing about Google Calendar scheduling. It will automatically, if you invite more than 2 people, it will automatically put up a Google Meet link.
And that's So the StreamYard link is probably what I should make sure is in there. But look, we're all here now. And
Yes.
by all, I mean Kame Egan's here too. It's great. If we've got Daniel Drew, we've got Kame Egan in the chat. Honestly, the show's ready to go. And I wanted to ask everybody what they think about the show, big picture, and we'll talk about these first 3 episodes. I'm going to start with Katie because I do already know how you feel. And so I'm going to go with the sort of the sure thing, the positivity that I know can be brought to the masses. So talk about what it is that you're enjoying so much about these first 3 episodes of Ironheart, Katie.
First and foremost, I just love the style of this. I'm glad that we're finally taking it to a different city that's not New York. I love that we're in Chicago. It feels very Chicago. We've got some Chicago artists that are kind of tracking a lot of this show right now. And Gorgeous George, definitely an artist to check out. I highly recommend. A lot of different singers and stuff that are throughout this entire series. I think it's original. I really love the pace and sort of the style that the show is bringing to everyone. And it's also it's a character that I feel like a lot of people don't really know, at least from the newer comic series. And I'm really enjoying getting to know it. And then also, that Mephisto's coming sometime.
So they say. I've been burned before, pun intended, for Mephisto. I have been burned before, but yes, that is something that we have been led to believe. And I do agree that it's nice to have a show set somewhere else. They managed to find the neighborhoods in Atlanta that look at least enough like Chicago. So
true.
Good for them. Nate, I wanted to get your thoughts on this show, your familiarity with the character going into this. I mostly know her from Wakanda Forever, but kind of wanted to know your background with her and what you've thought about these 3 episodes.
Sure. Yeah. I'm enjoying it so far. I also can definitely feel the difference in not being in New York City. For once, it's nice to have kind of like a different, just overall vibe to the show. Riri Williams, I think I read like the first Ironheart book when it came out, but I'm not super familiar with the character. So it's actually nice to have an MCU character that doesn't have as much like kind of comic baggage coming with it, that they can kind of do what they want. So I'm really just kind of enjoying the direction they're going with. I don't think I was aware that the Hood was going to be in this. I think that's
Anthony Ramos.
Yeah, it's a very interesting character that I am excited to kind of to see them on the screen, but also it just seems kind of like an odd pairing. I don't know. I there's a lot of excitement around the possibilities of where this like story could go. And so yeah, I'm enjoying it right now.
By the way, I have to admit to being just slightly distracted. Nate, is that new, the light over your head? And if
Yes.
it's not, and it's blinking, which I think is great, but that's how I noticed it. So there's for our audio audience, he's got a dog like Nate. I guess it's neon or a neon equivalent. And obviously putting together his real background instead of me, who just likes to put different fake ones behind me. But now I need a neon light, and
yeah, you do. You definitely do.
I won't rest until I get one. Mr. Brody.
Can we talk about Katie's background? Is not the rabbit in a snowstorm anymore. It's like there's actual colors and things behind her. That's epic.
Yeah, we changed it around our game room a little bit, and it's nice. I'm going to be able to display a couple more things, aka the bobblehead that good Count Eric Conner got for me out of the hardiness, so I can do this.
Aww.
And if you shake her head, does she sing the Witch's Road song or no?
Yes, 5 times actually.
Oh my God, that's great.
She does a scene from the HBO drama Mrs. Fletcher, which is a little bit naughty.
I want to get Brody's thoughts in a second. But William Walton, was it always supposed to come out over just 2 weeks, or did the release schedule get changed? Did they need to get all the episodes out before Fantastic Four for some reason? It hadn't initially been announced that way. Maybe it was always the plan. But that's the same thing I was thinking. They were like, let's get these out there. Let's have a little bit of runway for Fantastic Four so that we can focus on it. And for those of us who live in Burbank, Eric, it just means that they have a couple weeks to change those bus ads from Ironheart to Fantastic Four. The Elio ads, I think, have already been replaced. I think that they were like,
they wrote those on cocktail napkins.
Yeah, those weren't there though. But anyway, Mr. Brody, I wanted to get your thoughts on a character that I assume, like me, you're not particularly familiar with heading into the series.
No, she was not part of the Bronze Age of comics that I was reading. No. So I know her from being shoehorned into Wakanda Forever. And I definitely prefer her in her own show than why is she in this movie? It didn't make sense for her to be in the movie. That being said, my initial thoughts, it's much better than Secret Invasion.
Yeah.
It's better than Echo. So I feel like I feel like the release schedule shows Marvel's faith in the project. It took 2 years to come out. They still could have done 2 episodes for 3 weeks, or they could have maybe put out 2 and then 1 and still be done by Fantastic Four. I think they did let's get it out. Hopefully that people like it, and then it'll be over and done with, and we can clean the palette for Fantastic Four.
Well, and what they didn't do is the Echo, where they did all 5 at once on Disney Plus and Hulu.
Like I said, it's better than Echo. It's better. It's a 2-week release. I'll tell you what. My overall feeling of the show is it's darker. There was a death in the show. Like she sort of was responsible for a death. That's not really a Disney Plus kind of thing that we see too often. It is now. Yeah, I mean Agatha Harkness. People died on Agatha all along, but this was sort of like a hero. A hero was responsible for a death. And I think the CGI benefited from 2 years of being, on the shelf. The CGI looked much better than recent Marvel projects that got rushed. And so I thought visually looked good. I think I'm done with people getting in an armored suit at this point and being an Iron Man, Iron Spider. And the fact that she lives right off Ironheart Street seemed a little...
That it was just the title opening. They're doing the fun things with the title openings.
Yeah. I think that's where she got her name in the comics. If Nate could back me up on that, but I think that's how her name was derived. I do like that the hologram was not Tony Stark; it was her friend, because in the comics it's Tony Stark.
Yeah.
And I did a little research, so I did like overall. I did like some things they did. I did like some of the characters. We can talk later about how much I hate Pyro, but overall, I thought a solid, not bad 3 episodes.
Okay,
Is my initial,
Yeah, and look, you started with the way that I try to characterize everything is the baseline always is Secret Invasion.
Yeah.
And one day I'm going to watch something that's worse than Secret Invasion. It hasn't happened yet, but I think that's an important starting point. And I'm on a text thread with a number of people who think that shouldn't be the bar. I'm like, because it existed, that's where the bar is. It's like with Star Wars. Is it better than the Acolyte? Sure,
Acolyte,
is. Great.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the Acolyte is the Secret Invasion of Star Wars.
Well, speaking of acolytes and invasions, I do want to know what Eric Conner thinks about Ironheart. Getting your thoughts, sir.
Well, thank you for that intro. Thank you for comparing me to the single worst Marvel and Star Wars properties. I'm a twofer of crap. So first of all,
you're the Star Trek Voyager in my mind. Go ahead.
Damn, I'm season 1 Picard in your heart. Season
No,
2 Picard in the sheets.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It's season 2 Picard. I'm sorry. Anyway, I shouldn't have derailed you. I did mean season 2 Picard. I just wanted to.
Yes, Voyager was good. Come on.
Yeah, that's a conversation for another time. Eric, go ahead.
Theme song was great.
Well, first of all, I keep, even when I first heard the title, Lionheart comes to mind. Jean-Claude Van Damme's 17th worst film. It is one of those that part of me is always hoping he shows up somewhere around the Marvel universe, and he does not. Instead, we get Riri Williams, who is a wonderful character, although it's funny, this show to me has so many highs and a fair amount of lows. So I think I'm floating around Brody level, which I try to do most days of my life.
Understood.
That's always the goal. I think moving it to Chicago, great. Not moving it, but setting it in Chicago, great. Even if it's Chicago via Buckhead or some other Atlanta suburb, that's okay. It at least does not look like all the other shows. It has a different kind of energy, different kind of cast. I think most of the cast is pretty solid. I don't know if I'm a big Anthony Ramos fan, and I hate to say it because I love Hamilton, but there's something in him. In The Heights, he's very cute in The Heights, but
he's very cute in this too.
He is actually he's very cute in this. Thank you.
He's also very good in the Crown Royal commercial. He does.
Yeah. I look at those eyes, I get lost, as Debbie Gibson, I believe, once sang, or was it Tiffany?
It's really not giving gang leader, heist leader extraordinary.
Say the word vibes. Say the word vibes.
The fact that Eric invoked a Debbie Gibson song, and never mix up Debbie Gibson and Tiffany again on this show or you're off. But yes, the fact that doesn't necessarily scream gang leader. What were you going to say, Katie? Sorry.
I was going to say the man is wearing a Robin Hood like hood, and then he's also got jerkness embedded into his back. Like, he's got to play a little bit of camp in the beginning here. And yes, understandably, Anthony Ramos does come from the musical theater world, so he does give a little bit of that zhuzh to some stuff, but I think he is an excellent actor, and I'm actually very excited to see where we go when we get a little bit more demonic. I know we got a good taste of it towards the end of episode 3 here, but I'm waiting for them to go real dark with him.
Well, and I'll see if he can take us there. That's the thing, though, because I feel like one thing he might lack as a performer is gravitas. Ew. And this character should be filled with gravitas, considering he's literally wearing a hood that's poisoning the F out of him. And all the tattoos in the world cannot cover it up, as I've learned from my own experience.
Do you just have like a Prison Break style tattoo thing going on?
I'm wall-to-wall tramp stamps all over my body. Only a few have seen it, and fewer still have lived to tell the tale.
Can we talk about the WoW tattoo on your butt that just has a W on one cheek and a W on the other?
That was a real private world.
No, we cannot talk about it.
Thank you, Nate. I appreciate it.
What I show you in Brooklyn stays in Brooklyn, I thought.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
There's no honor amongst thieves. It is a solid show. The idea that they released in 2 weeks, a little disconcerting. I think I agree they could have spaced this out. She's a wonderful performer. And I apologize. I just blanked on her name. The actress who plays Riri Williams. Really, I really enjoy her. And I love her chemistry with her best friend, who was, I think, one of the daughters in This Is Us. And I thought her.
Is she? Is that?
I believe so. She was on This Is Us for multiple seasons. And age-wise, because I didn't quite recognize her, but I'm like, I sort of know who she is. But I really love her as AI, and that kind of funky relationship is enjoyable. But I do find it is a little bit hit and miss. I thought the third episode was the best of the three. I think the break-in at the end was really kind of cool. Riri as a character, I don't know. She's I watched her scenes in Wakanda Forever again to prep for this, and I found her to be a little hard to connect with at first because she was kind of selfish, kind of like all over the place, and then really like just helping a clearly criminal element. So I found that a little confusing, but where they left us halfway through the season, I think like, okay, that's a pretty solid place to kind of take us into the back nine of this show.
Right. And Dominique Thorne is the actress who plays Riri Williams. It was one of those ones where I knew, but I was like, I'd rather not get it wrong. So I took the split second to double check. And yeah, I think that she's very different in Wakanda Forever. You know, so you can make the case that is this really the same character? But obviously the circumstances change. And I think, look, I think we can understand sort of, you know, making some decisions. She's so singularly focused on, you know, I think the worst thing that could have happened to her is getting the Wakanda technology and having the full potential realized. And then at the end of that movie, he's like, you know, you can't keep it. All right. Yeah, I guess that's going to make for a show then. All right. Thanks for not letting me keep it, Shuri. I don't know. What was I going to do with it? Well, probably a lot of bad things. So, you know what? I'll give it back to Shuri. She was right. So I think that I find her to be interesting because she's different. And I think that, look, we can say what we want about all the different Disney Plus shows. It does create an opportunity to kind of give some different voices. We're talking about different locations. Let's not forget where Echo was set, basically, you know, in like Oklahoma, adjacent to Native American reservation.
Around the same timeline too. It sounds like maybe October 2025 or so.
Yeah. So I think that, and obviously going back a few years, but Ms. Marvel, the series, you know, for the exotic locale of Jersey City. But no, what I'm talking about is and I assume you guys hear the fact that now my neighbors are having a leaf blower.
Yeah.
Right now is always the perfect time to do it. But don't worry, I'll mute myself when I'm done rambling here. So I think that I appreciate getting different perspectives, different characters, and I think the supporting cast built up around her is interesting. I mean, it's essentially her mom and Natalie, and you know, we're seeing some other people, but I wanted to get your thoughts more, Nate, and sort of the world that they've built around her as she, you know, endeavors to build this suit.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely cool, like seeing the school stuff and like how she had her like prototype suit that she has with her. And I do think that the gang is like fairly well fleshed out. You know, each of the characters has like a little niche, and we've kind of gotten like a little bit about them. I think some of the banter has, well, I think some of the banter has been good. Some of the what's the word I'm looking for? The vernacular has felt a little forced. It's felt a little corporate. What's up, yellow fellow young kids? It's super lit tonight, kind of.
Yeah,
a little bit. But
what would you
still
categorize it as, Nate? Would you say it's Gen Z talk? Is it Gen Alpha talk?
No, it's Gen Z talk in the way that Gen Z is just taking African American vernacular and generalizing it and using it incorrectly. This is a very black show, and there are parts of it that feel authentically black, and there are parts of it that feel like, okay, we have to check this list in order to like let people know that like this is what this is. And I think some of the characters, sometimes the dialogue is like but that being said, I do think the way that they kind of, especially I agree with wow, my brain, I agree with what he said. He was just saying about episode 3 being the best one, because I think that last high, seeing them kind of like have to work together, fleshes out the group more and like makes her feel like she's actually a part of something. So I think it's very interesting because just the concept of making basically like a Tony Stark successor. Tony Stark as a character, in my eyes, has always been much better on a team than like as a solo character. Like he works as kind of like the standoffish alcoholic in the corner who's like a tech genius, arguing with Hank and arguing with Steve, right? And like the dichotomy around these characters is what makes the stories very interesting. And I think they just kind of got lucky with the Iron Man adaptation of the films that they got Robert Downey Jr., who's insanely charismatic. And they were able to take a character that I guess kind of like more easily transfers into real life stuff with the suit versus like powers and all of that kind of things. And so now it's like we're trying to kind of recreate that character in a solo environment. And so I'm glad that we're seeing her in the context of this team. I just hope that when this eventually blows up, she ends up on like a Young Avengers or something, because I think that the interaction with like her with this personality, I'm not super sold on like I want to like a solo movie of this character, at least so far, of like I feel like super invested, whereas I think her, on a team collaborating with other young heroes or something is going to make for much more like compelling content.
Right. Yeah. I think that we're seeing, does she play well with others? But however, the others are, really not necessarily into things for the right reasons. But so I think that this is maybe the stepping stone, is maybe the learning lesson okay, I can probably get all this done and still not try and rob people and, use this high-tech suit to do that. I had no idea that Eric Andre was in this show. I mean,
I didn't either.
And so when we saw him, I'm like, wait, how? And then you're like, okay. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like through some form or another, maybe there'll be like an AI Eric Andre or something. But I'm surprised at how little we've gotten. But they're keeping sort of the character in our minds, so that's why I'm expecting some reemergence. But and I think that it was in one of the teasers for it. But I did find it to be an interesting sequence. Okay, you're gonna die in this elevator, or you're gonna be able to join our team. I do think that that's an interesting dynamic. It's some next level hazing, I suppose. But what do you feel, Katie, about sort of the team like dynamic with the Hoods gang?
Yeah, I will say that this feels like an executive corporate note of how to pair all of these teammates together. Eric Andre was completely out of left field for me as well. I was like, what? Oh, he's gonna die soon or something. And shocking, he does. But we don't see him die, and we don't
off-screen
see
death. Yeah,
off-screen death. So we don't really know what happened.
And every time there's an off-screen death, I always wonder if I should trust it.
I don't think we should, but I think we'll have some kind of like reference as to why she knows him from like the chat blogs and like the Reddit was it Discord? The hacker Discords. I don't know. As we all do when we go through Discord, we're all hackers. But no, I do think that the team is a little Disneyfied. It's a little cutesy. I think Cloud is very interesting, though. The fact that she was able to like break in and grab the hood, that was odd to me. I wonder if there is any kind of, I don't know, consequence for touching the hood or whatever, like interacting with that garment. I'm not really sure.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that they did end the third episode, making us wait the one whole week for the other three in a way that's kind of interesting to see what happens next. What were your thoughts, Eric?
Well, as a team, I think one of the issues we run into is a couple of them have defined sort of strengths. The other ones maybe a little more nebulous. Though I found them sort of like what you were describing, Nate. Like, it was kind of like a grab bag of like some of it authentic, some of it felt like, dare I say, sweaty middle-aged white men writing some of these characters.
Hey,
as one myself.
Me and Brody are right here, dude.
As am I.
I'm not sweaty.
I think we should get the name tags up just to show Eric's name tag now.
But I felt very seen in that moment, which is
hold
important.
on, Nate. You said or middle aged. You mean I'm not there yet?
Yeah. You're too young. Yeah,
you mirror me.
Too young to be called middle aged.
I think you need to take a look at the life expectancy of people in Asia. So.
Or in Mars. I think the sort of the planning of that first heist seemed maybe a touch arbitrary. I also it brought up so many questions I had about when is this thing set? And I know you said the year, Katie, but the idea that Chicago now has this working futuristic tunnel, and it's I've driven around Chicago, man. They don't have that crap. I know that. So then it's all right, when is that? One question. All right, so the hacker in the group, how does she type so fast with those nails? And that's a legitimate question. I even grabbed a picture of it because I feel like if you have to do if you ever saw Swordfish, where Hugh Jackman had to hack into something in the course of a minute while receiving a certain sexual act, you need nails that are really well manicured. That's what I've learned in my own hacking. I don't understand how she was able to do it so quick. And
I would just guess one simple word: practice. I'm going to guess this isn't the first rodeo with those nails, and maybe a few have broken along the way, but it's just like learning how to type in general. Once you get the hang of it, you just use sort of this part of your finger to actually.
Well, it's a very narrow superpower. Maybe those nails are able to type on an iPhone Surface as well as a laptop without missing a key.
Can you imagine getting a superpower and that's the one you get?
That's it.
That feels like the one that I would get.
Whatever she's doing, she makes it work.
It looks fabulous, admittedly.
Yeah.
Come on,
you're really not helping the age thing, Brody.
He went from middle age to end of age.
Okay, for the record, that song is still a hit. RuPaul is still a hit, and I just Googled middle aged. I'm in it. So.
All right. Well, you know what? The first step is admitting you have a problem. So there you go.
One song, if I may, "Ain't Nobody," featured in Breaking, the original, not Breaking 2.
Not Electric Boogaloo.
That was before my time, Eric. Before my time.
Sure it was.
I'm sure
I'm sorry. The one pun had a fun idea. Lady Deathstrike as a receptionist, if you know the X-Men character. And by the way, Cam Egan, Brody, I thought the same thing. So
thank you.
And Cam Egan, let us know if you feel that they got the Chicagoland representation accurate. And earlier, Ivan Soto did mention that some of it was filmed in Chicago. I'm sure some of it was, but most of these things aren't. Ms. Marvel was the same way. Echo was the same way. Right?
Oh, when they were sitting on the grass talking to her, when she's talking to Natalie, and the skyline of Chicago is behind them. It's so uncomfortably green screened.
Yeah.
You're couldn't they just fly? They don't have a budget to fly to Chicago for a couple of shots. So yeah, definitely the Chicago, except for the train scene when she flies over the trains. There's some drone shots. Well, they're definitely Chicago, but
I do like the way that they compensate with the Cubs flag and they're
right.
because we're in Chicago. Are you? But that's fine.
No, it's driving out to the bunker. It's
this is always an Italian beef sandwich just off camera.
I mean,
had they gone into the beef, that would have been great.
Yeah,
that would have been the greatest crossover in Sunny in Philadelphia, Abbott Elementary.
Have some Portillo's cross promotion. I get it. Look, all of this stuff makes sense. And Ivan Soto thought it was green screen at the park. You're not crazy. That's definitely green screen.
It was pretty green screen, yeah.
But it's as green screened as I am right now. But so as we sort of look at that, Brody, do you have any thoughts that have been simmering away that will help prove that you are clearly a zillennial and not the way you were characterized age-wise earlier?
Well, I have to agree with my arch enemy Nate. I thought Clown's dialogue was horrifically bad. I thought they were trying to make Clown sound like she was street, but she came off like a white kid in a Disney show that was trying to be street. It was just so over the top, yeah, you know me, man, yeah. Like it was just so like nobody speaks that way. And so the whole gang is all the greatest martial artists ever. No matter whose security team they encounter, hand to hand, they flip them, kick them, karate, jujitsu, all of it. They can defeat any army of people, no matter how much they're outnumbered, because they're brother and sister. Like it was just too much coincidence. And then, the bag. Let's go with Katie. Katie, if God forbid your parents passed away and you cremated your mother and you put her in a bag, what would you write on the bag?
Her parents. They were delightful.
That's okay. It's okay. My mom is cremated but buried. But yeah, keep going. Yeah, go ahead.
Would you put mom on the bag, or
I would put anybody?
Would you put her nickname
on the bag?
But you wouldn't write Odie. You wouldn't write Odie. You'd write Dad.
The dog from Garfield? No, I would hope not.
I also wouldn't put them anywhere in the kitchen. Are you kidding me?
No, of course not. But who refers to their father by their first name? Like I would never write my father's name on a bag of his ashes.
Yes,
that's
I get. As soon as she's like, "Oh, my father's Obadiah," I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's a we know."
It couldn't afford an urn, or keeping it in the kitchen next to the brown sugar. No, I could see that going horribly wrong or horribly right. Whoa.
Her name is Riri.
So the comment that I had in the chat from Cam Egan was the tracksuit mafia is better than the gang. I do miss the tracksuit mafia, and there's rumblings that despite how unhappy Jeremy Renner was when they said, "Hey, we want to do another season of Hawkeye, but pay you half," there's still a chance that it might happen. Tracksuit Mafia standalone one-off movie like they're going to do with the Punisher. That sounds fine to me. The dialogue is one thing that our friend Husey, who some of you have been on before, I was trading messages with him earlier today. He's enjoying it, but I do think that when you can possibly have younger characters that may be a different ethnicity than you as a writer, and on set you could be like, well, how would you say this? Sometimes that goes a long way, instead of like, well, this is how we believe that this gang should talk, and let's use this they dust off the slang handbook to the MCU that Kevin Feige's a good guy, but I hope he's not the one coming up with slang.
Well, it does sound like Disney is actually making different styles of like writer groups that are trying to help greenlight better projects and work with specific teams. And I think this is the start of a lot of these like mini groups that they're actually putting together, especially within the whole Disney realm. But I feel like this is the start of a new era of what Marvel's going to be putting out and like what they're going to be focusing on with specific groups of writers and production teams and things like that.
Yeah, no, I think that I do think that they're certainly taking big swings, and we've already addressed the fact that this show has kind of been in the works and been retold for a while, so long that you'd think it was the Blade reboot, but not quite that long. But so there have been some issues, because remember, she showed up in season 3 of What If because the assumption was that everybody would know her by then, and we didn't. But she'd been in the movie. So I do want to kind of go through some of the things. I think that the explanation for how Natalie comes about makes sense. Obviously, Brody, you were talking earlier about how she is not going to have Tony Stark. I mean, there's no budget that would have allowed for Robert Downey Jr. to be in this. Maybe you could have gotten Rhodey, but he probably is a little skittish with Disney Plus after the aforementioned Secret Invasion. At least I hope. Don Cheadle's like, no, I'll just keep doing movies. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
So I think it's an interesting sort of way that, okay. And look, we have to look at this as like comic book explanations. She falls asleep with everything hooked up to her head, and then her dead friend seems to be there with all of her memories. I found the sequence where she's talking to her mom interesting, certainly not important and moving the story along, but I feel like we're getting some good character stuff. And I do think, some of the writing at times is a little thinner, but in general, I'm enjoying everyone. Does anybody stand out for you? I'll ask you first, Nate. Is there, we sort of talked about Anthony Ramos as the big bad crime boss. Is there anybody that you're connecting with particularly well, and then the opposite of that? So who are you feeling like they're doing the best job, and maybe a character that needs some more work?
Oh, what a great question.
Brody suggested it. That's the only reason I had a great
I
question.
don't really know. I just realized that we are halfway through this show.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, already. But what happened? Who? I don't know, man. Like, I think I do think I want to know more about what happened with Natalie and, the stepdad dying. And obviously Riri as a character, is the main character. I want to see what happens with them. But like, I'm really not really, are there any side characters? Like, I guess Parker, like,
yeah,
but he's really like an antagonist, kind of, maybe, I think, like a sympathetic antagonist. I don't know. That's a really good question that I don't know if I have an answer to.
Well, it might be it might be part of the issue with the show that it's not as easily answered. And again, that was Brody's idea for that question. So,
that's because you're missing the greatest sidekick character in the history of Disney Plus Marvel shows.
I can't wait to hear who it is.
The kid with the little red wagon.
Oh, I do like that.
Oh, the kid with the red wagon was fantastic.
That kid's like, what about inflation?
Yeah.
I mean, that kid's great.
He certainly understood that, there seems to be a need there. And just real quick aside, and Armor Wars, whether we get that or don't, I would lean towards don't. I've forgotten about Armor Wars.
We're gonna get Blade 2 before we get Armor Wars.
Which interestingly will also be called Electric Boogaloo. Mm-hmm. I think that, and look, our buddy Ivan Soto is very vocal in the chat right now. Natalie's creation is so dumb they even have her changing clothes. Come on. I don't know. Look, I think that sort of the projection AI assistant that other people can see makes it kind of interesting, for very sweaty old middle-aged guy reference. It's like Dean Stockwell on Quantum Leap. You have this person who can help you, and he had this crazy device that seems like it was half as effective as an iPhone 2, but again, it was 1989. So
we also have an emotional tie with Natalie too,
yes,
because
exactly.
like clearly Riri is not actually dealing with her grief of this moment, and she's completely ignoring it. And I feel like the ultimate bad guy within this situation is her grief about what happened during this drive-by, and she's not really addressing it. She's trying to just go forward. She's trying to push forward into like the future of like, I'm going to make money. I'm going to make this amazing suit. I'm going to be better than Bill Gates and, Tony Stark combined and Pym. I feel like there is a reason why a lot of this kind of feels a little bit hokey-ish, and why, Ivan, you might be a little bit annoyed by Natalie, but Natalie is taking a full form from Riri's memories, which I think is interesting because she's also having her own memories as an individual person. So we're dealing a lot with like the magic of AI within this whole concept, and magic that is within the Marvel universe on top of it. So I think it's an interesting moment to be having this kind of a story come out, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree with everything that you're saying, and it is to what Nate said is like, yeah, we are half done, and again, I'm on this text thread where except for one other person, everyone feels like nothing really happened, and I'm like, I mean, they have like basically, and let's commend them for, by the way, doing hour-long TV episodes that are like 45 to 50 minutes. So far we haven't, I've jinxed it now, but so far we haven't gotten any of those 28, 33-minute episodes that we've gotten on other shows. So these have actually been like a real TV series.
Compliment of the year is they're actually in the ballpark of 44 minutes. Right?
Well, yeah, I mean that's what we expect TV length to be, and we're getting it. But I am finding it interesting to sort of build up, especially her backstory. I find it interesting that Natalie froze when she saw the gun. You know, so I'm working under the assumption that we're going to explore those things, and we'll get some resolution on it. I thought one of the most interesting things was when her mom asked, well, can you make one of those of Gary, who would be, the stepdad? And she didn't even really think about it. She's like, oh, no. Because she could. I mean, she doesn't even know how she made Natalie, though, which is really the right answer. So I think that we've got almost 3 hours to have it all come together, and we'll kind of break down some of the specifics momentarily. But do you feel, Eric, I'll ask you first, that they're on a good trajectory to they could probably wrap this up in just 3 more, considering where they left us?
Yeah. I think because it doesn't really have a deep bullpen, they're able to do that. Like, we're not talking that many plot lines, that many characters. So as a result, 3 episodes feels like we're right around the corner from how this thing's going to wrap up. I do, we were talking about characters that, connected with. And again, that was one of my, I think, big sticking points was I found Riri a little hard to connect with in those early episodes. 3rd episode, a little bit more so, but she did leave a guy to just die, and not just die a little, die from really a horrible, horrible death. And so I'm like, well, all right, well, that's a choice. That might hang out with her for a bit, but I think now it almost feels like episode 3 is a little bit of a reset button, because now Riri clearly is like, all right, this gang is not my thing. I don't know why it took her 3 episodes to get there, considering they are already almost killing people left and right who were very innocent people, just guys there in union gigs as security guards. And she was kind of like, well, it's okay. I know I know I need to do this for a good cause. It's like, well, really, are you? But now I feel like at least, okay, we know who our villains are. I do think I had never known how to pronounce his name. Alden Ehrenreich. The guy played Solo in Christian's favorite Star Wars film.
Oh, yes.
It's not my least favorite, I'll tell you that.
I was impressed when I realized later on that it was him.
Yeah.
At first, I'm like, who the heck is this guy?
Do you want to know when I realized it was him? Right now, when you said that, I just didn't think about it. Yeah, I see. No, I see it now. Now that you say it, I'm like, of course
I watched a breakdown of these episodes on YouTube, and the guy doing the breakdown said, and Alden Ehrenreich is a great actor. He'd be great if the character goes somewhere. I'm like, oh, he must be on some show I'm not familiar with. The fact, because I always refer to him as non-Han. So I didn't remember his name. I've met him. We had him on our radio show. I've met him, taking pictures with him, and I still didn't remember his name. And the fact that he looks like he hasn't aged a minute since Han Solo, since the Solo movie, I should have realized he was poop stained, but I didn't. I'm with Christian.
I feel like it's worth clipping out and sending to him on social media. It's like I took a picture with the guy and didn't even recognize him.
No.
But meanwhile, he's only talked about you in every post he's done since then.
Yeah. I do find him interesting, and I do want to talk about that character.
He hates those flowers, though, man. That was those flowers. That was
I love that little personal journey for him.
And him with it in his mouth.
I thought it was going to go I thought it was going to go much darker than that, so that he just cut the flowers, and I was like,
the dog was okay. I was really worried about the dog.
Yeah, we've got 3 more episodes for that lady's house to get burned down. So let's reconvene when we talk about the second batch of episodes. It was an interesting point, Brody, that Eric saw episode 3 as kind of a reset. And I need to ask if you agree. And do you think that in the case of this show, it was a reset?
Oh,
You're the only one I was going to ask that to. I think Nate couldn't have been more disgusted, and I didn't even ask it to him.
If you're watching this on YouTube, you can rewind it and watch him do that joke again. I thought episode 3 should have been episode 2. Okay, I would have liked to have seen the follow-up immediately, but it was a good cliffhanger. You know, the shadow of Ironheart over his. You know, I thought it was the best episode of the 3. It was grittier. There was no way she lets that guy. It was John, was it?
Yeah, cousin John.
Let him live. She can't let cousin John live because he's going to rat her out.
Yeah,
you know, he can't be trusted. So, for me, I thought it was like, okay, go ahead.
She could have at least been like, no, we have to save him or something. Like, that's what I was waiting for her to be like, no, we have to help him too. And then Natalie to be like, no, we got to go right now or something, or he was about to kill you or something like that. Right. But she was just like, nope.
You know, you're right. Because usually Nate, in those moments, we usually get if you stop to save him, you're going to die. And that's usually how you can justify it. Now, the true heroes will figure out a way to also save the person, even when it's somebody that, you know, it's not in their best interest to keep alive. But yeah, I do think I expect a lot of repercussions specifically in the 4th episode to be dealing with the fact that she made this decision. And it was definitely surprising. And I think not necessarily in a good way. It was some of the strongest character development for Riri Williams is that, you know, back against the wall. I really just, it ties up this loose end if I let this guy just go, you know. So
well, I think it also her freezing in these kinds of moments. Like she doesn't really have that ability to make these kinds of life and death choices at the moment because a big part of her whole history is watching her stepfather and her best friend die from a drive-by shooting, which I think we'll get more information about that whole moment in the next 3 episodes. But I do think that her kind of coming to terms with what is doing things for good and what is doing things for good with wrong reasons. I mean, they literally have that whole speech with Anthony Ramos about like, there's no one who's succeeded in life who hasn't gotten their hands a little dirty. And I feel like that is also integral to this whole talk of AI, of technology, of magic, you know, like what are their end goals, each one of them? And it sounds like a couple of this crew are like, I want to start a restaurant or something. But like it is dealing with the like, okay, well, how far are you willing to go to sell your soul out in order to accomplish the things that you actually want to do? And I think Ironheart is the whole emphasis of what is she willing to sacrifice a part of herself in order to do the things that she wants to do.
Daniel gave us his thoughts, and when Daniel Drew speaks or types, I always listen. So the suit flew her out of the greenhouse. She didn't really make the choice. Natalie technically made the choice. She was dealing with suffocating. And I think that's sort of what we're saying is that she froze in that moment. And there is though that moment when she's like, all right, yeah, I'm going to go take a look. And she zeroes in and she sees the infrared and it's like, oh yeah, that guy that I let die, he's not moving. So, you know, there definitely was a moment. And look, I mean, do you think, Nate, she's more upset about that or the fact that she let Han Solo's like little wristband left behind when she told him that nothing could get traced back to him?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think she kind of, she has the characterization is very much prideful and like she feels like she's so smart and tough that she can handle anything. And I think that was kind of one of the come to Jesus moments of like, no, actually someone's dead. I did the one specific thing I said I wouldn't do and left this tech behind that's going to be traced back to me and also this other guy. And I think it was kind of all coming to a head at once of her realizing like I can't just power through this and muscle my way to getting what I want. I think she's got a lot to process. And the fact that they didn't give us that like any type of like hesitation of her it really makes me think that like, are they setting her up to be like more of like an anti-hero of like a or just like actually a villain character that we just get a complex background about? Like,
I think it depends on who influences her
halfway
more.
there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
First
Yeah.
Ironheart, now Coldheart.
Iron Heartless.
There it is.
You made me wish I hadn't just hit the bell, because obviously that one. Yeah, I need a sound of the reverse bell that I can take it away. Look, I can't imagine that they would do that with this character because she's existed. So so Brody, for our visual audience, is showing the picture of him with Alda Ehrenreich and sweet Boba Fett shirt you were wearing that day.
Thank you.
I like that. And you're like, look, I met this guy and I didn't even recognize
I didn't know who he was.
His posting was me and a man.
Yeah.
No name.
Yeah.
Can we just make that a Geekscape shirt? Like just the two
just
of
Bro-
you. Just Brody. Be like, who's this guy?
Yeah, exactly. You should go through and see if there's any other photos of people you didn't recognize in a series or movie. I think that could lead to some fun for sure. But
I did take a picture with someone I didn't know at the time. Who's the guy who wrote who was the star of the Facebook movie?
Jesse Eisenberg?
Yeah, Jesse, right. Yeah, he was walking by in our studio and I'm like, oh, can we get a picture? I was like, he looks familiar. I can't place it. And I took the picture. I was like, oh, I love your work. And then after he left, I'm like, oh, yeah, I had to Google it. I'm like, oh, it's Jesse Eisenberg.
Brody just posted that as two Jews. He didn't even put his own name in that one.
Yeah.
If anyone could make that joke, it's only the two of you.
Eisenreich, Eisenberg, whatever.
I don't even know. I don't even know why that's
brother.
I don't even have an opinion on that one.
Well, you know what? Hire a Jewish writer from Disney who can explain to you the lingo and the verb.
Yes, they have provided me with all the slang.
Oi, look at your armored suit. It makes me want to plot.
It literally would be just like that too.
Episode 4.
Yeah. Mephisto, you should know from him.
Yeah. Just wait till we get the flashback scene with Eric Andre.
That's right. He's half Jewish. So
yeah. Well, exactly. So I think that it is on the whole, it's a fun show, but there's things that I wasn't expecting. And that's what I was going to say is, as we were talking, the idea that she could be more than anti-hero and actually some degree of villain, matched up with the Young Avengers is interesting. They couldn't possibly do that because, the character exists. They've got, they've got comic books to try and sell. But the idea that she would be something less than heroic at the end of these 6 episodes is interesting, but I don't think that they would do it. The one pun says, Mel Brooks does a superhero movie, I'm there. Yeah, I thought that. Oh, Mel Brooks does a vampire movie, I'm there. And I unfortunately was there. And I wish I hadn't been. Dracula Dead and Dracula Dead and loving it.
Yeah.
Said no one.
Yeah.
Spaceballs 2 though is coming out.
Heck yeah.
That's
potentially with our buddy Tim Russ.
Yeah, exactly. It's there's no Joan Rivers, no John Candy, but sure, let's go ahead. Let's do that.
Who'd be good
I'm sorry, I got to interrupt you. I have to interrupt you. The one pun says, "Don't hate on that movie. Leslie was great." He was not. That movie's terrible. That might be the worst movie I've ever seen in the theater. I love
Leslie Nielsen is gold, baby. Don't ever insult Leslie Nielsen.
Leslie Nielsen's phenomenal in a movie that is at least decently written. I love him in the Old Police Squad and then the Naked Gun movies, of course. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. In any case, here's the thing. Calling magic nonsense doesn't make sense anymore, says Ivan Soto. I think it still does, because I'm going to tell you something right now, Ivan Soto. I think magic is nonsense.
Yeah.
In the real world. And you might sometime. The only thing magical that I can remember is a nationally syndicated television show called The Magic Hour.
Magic Garden.
That's the only time I can remember magic is The Magic Hour, which was about 6 months it was on TV. I do remember growing up with The Magic Garden, though.
Magic School Bus.
All right, so that's so fine. Okay, great. There's magic out there, but no, I think
magic dance.
When you have these people that
Magic
are
Man by Heart.
essentially, just dealing with Magic Touch from Kiss's Dynasty album. See, you did it. You broke me. Yeah. But in any event, the idea that it's like, well, the magic's not real, demons aren't real, the supernatural isn't real. You're going to always have characters who say that because it's logically none of that stuff makes sense.
As Olivia Newton-John said, you got to believe in magic.
Did she really say that?
She most definitely.
I will say that I feel like because she's so like Riri Williams is so tech minded that I understand why her saying that magic is nonsense and being faced with people like the Hood will come to terms at some point. I understand your frustration with it, but at the same time, I think it is like a lesson for her and like what. Some people think that geniuses with technology are like they're using magic. I mean, the fact that Iron Man was just as strong or just as part of the Avengers as someone like Thor or Doctor Strange, I think is kind of what they're going for in this theme. But technology and magic, I think, is going to be kind of the end overall. I don't know, something.
Yeah, and Tony would react in the same way too, of trying to how do I have to understand how this works. There has to be an explanation. That's just kind of like the scientist's mind, right? Like that's why she wants to get a piece of the Hood so she can study the energy coming off of it, the waves, and try to figure out like how does this work? What is she's trying to understand it from a scientist's perspective. And like the whole point of magic is like it doesn't make sense. It's some other explanation or system or something. So yeah, I think them setting up this kind of battle between magic and technology is it's an interesting angle to take for sure, especially with like the Hood having Mephisto ties and demon mythology, mystical stuff, and having just had the Agatha show. And like them, this is cool, them expanding more parts of the MCU, and like even within some of the longest running comics and characters, like they're still magic has been in the Marvel universe for a long time, and there's still characters that are like, oh, that doesn't make any sense, or like the magic can't be real. So like of course she's gonna be like that.
Yeah,
right. And Raging Rhino, you're not helping us move on from this. As Rick Ocasek said, it's magic when I'm with you. So
yeah, and listen, on that note, America said you can do magic, but more importantly, 50 Cent had the magic stick. So
Ivan Soto said, would you say the same if a character says aliens don't exist in the MCU? If it's a character has never seen an alien, because you have to assume that there are people in the MCU that never saw, I wish I'd never seen a Skrull, but had never seen the Chitauri or Groot. There are plenty of people that exist in the MCU that would say aliens aren't real.
It feels akin to someone saying COVID's not real. Like it feels like because they haven't firsthand experienced it.
The invasion of New York was televised.
Yeah.
Right.
You dive into my app mentions sometimes, Katie. But
it was all AI.
The point is that Ivan, I'm not saying that that in the MCU magic isn't real. I'm just saying that it absolutely makes sense that people would assume it's not. And we don't really know quite how much people understand about the blip and Thanos and the Avengers, and then your friends showing up again 5 years later. I don't know how, and it sounds like it would be boring to do as a movie and maybe as a TV show, but I would find it interesting if they did a book or a comic that kind of tied in, because what do most people think about all these things? We know what Scott Lang thinks about it. We know what people in these movies think, but do the average people just see stuff? It's like, I can't explain. We've talked a lot about Han Solo. In The Force Awakens, he's like, I've seen a lot of stuff that I can't explain. It doesn't mean he's like, I believe in the Force. It's just like, it still seems like it's kind of a hokey thing, but sometimes you see stuff that you can't explain. So anyway, I think that's what it is. We don't need to keep.
Did you catch the Scott Lang reference, by the way, in episode 1?
Oh, I'm glad you referenced that because our friend Rob Kuttner, you can go back and look up a past episode of this show. He helped Scott Lang write his book. And we interviewed him about helping Scott Lang write his book. Eric, you remember that? We talked to him about he and Scott Lang collaborated on the book. And I noticed the book, and I really thought it was right here, and I was going to hold it up. It's not, but it had been up here for a while. So I know the color scheme of that book. So I'm like, oh, I think Riri just stuffed some cash into what is it? Look Out for the Little Guy. Is that the name of the book, Eric?
Yeah, something like that. Right?
I have it somewhere here.
Yeah,
somewhere.
But it was. And then the other book that she gave the things was Great Expectations, which is an interesting kind of allegory to what they're doing with Riri's character.
Yeah. So because I knew that Rob had worked on the Look Out for the Little Guy book, I know I could have done it in a more high-tech way. I just took a picture of my TV screen. But I had to freeze frame it because it's like a split second that you see it, because in the next image it's actually just her getting the money in it. But so that was fun. Boy, we spent a few minutes talking about it now, but I was excited about it. What did you think when you saw it, Eric? Was my email when you realized it happened, or had you noticed it?
I think I got your email before I saw the episode. So
that's a spoiler.
Massively so. Yeah. I mean, to the point I almost quit this entire show. But
I'm gonna look out for the link guy.
Right. And I think that's also the fun when you have Marvel Cinematic, right? It's like you can have these little Easter eggs. I mean, Pixar, remember they used to always put in a reference to their next movie? They would kind of hide it in there. And I think there's something kind of sweet about that. And if it means another, I don't know, 2,500 people get a chance to read Scott Lang's work, they should. It was a lovely little book. Little was not a pun intended, but it's there. And we just go past it. It was good.
The one pun says at least Ant-Man is open about shrinkage. That's actually not a chapter in that book, but maybe in
that was a fan fiction Christian wrote later.
Yeah, look out for the little penis.
Ding!
What's that metaphor?
No, I'm not going to hit the bell for that. It was like
it's not even a single entendre.
It was like it was like you needed the putter to just tap that in, and he's like, "Oh, I know what I've got. I've got a
driver."
He used Mjolnir to try and get that in there. Huh? All right, you got the bell for that one. That was just and then this is funny. I haven't said I do like that. Thank you very much. So in any case, do we want to focus on any, are there particular shortcomings to this series, these 3 episodes? Because I have read criticisms from people. I was telling Katie before we started, people that look, anytime any new project comes out from one of these established properties, you're going to have a swarm of haters. And then if you have a female lead or a minority lead in any way, and then
trans character.
Honestly, I actually haven't read anything about the trans character. There's
there's lots of hate about Slug. Yeah.
Okay. So but I've usually seen big stuff, because it's like, oh, okay, so we have this. So what is the show? And I think that people are predisposed to not liking the show because of that. And
there's been a huge review bomb before, right when it came out, everybody review bombed the IMDb page, which I recommend. Even if you liked it a little bit, go and write your review on IMDb, because there are a lot of haters just doing that for shits and giggles.
Yeah, it's at 3.6 right now out of 10, which I think might even put it below Secret Invasion, which is
that's unheard of.
Yeah. You know what? Like you're saying, Katie, even if you don't love this show, the idea that it could be ranked below Secret Invasion sounds like an injustice.
That's an injustice. That's a huge.
It is a 3.6 right now.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. It really deserves more than that. And I understand that I am usually predisposed to just enjoy all of these different shows and things like that, but I do think that this is way better than Secret Invasion. I think that this has a lot more clout. Yes, it is odd that we have the first half of the series and we're not really sure where exactly it's going or what. Sure. I think that's fine. It is a weird release, but I think it's nice that we're actually getting it, which is one of the things that, like, I feel like the time that they did spend on this, like, I think the fight scenes are really great. I feel like the score to this whole show is really wonderful. They're doing what they can, I feel like, to make up for a lot of lost ground over the last couple of years, and how they're doing it, I think, there are pieces that are rushed, and we definitely see that. We take note of that. But with the strikes and everything that's happened in the last couple of years, I think they're doing a pretty damn good job, and it does not deserve to be review bombed.
No, in fact, I would say focus that energy and see if you can get Secret Invasion down to 0. I think that if you really want to review bomb a show, let's review bomb a show that's
terrible. If there's justice in the world, that would happen.
If you can't lift one up, crap on the other one.
And by the way, Daniel Drew, review bombing is malarkey indeed. I'm going to put you in timeout for using such rough street language.
Thank you, pointing soldier.
Yes, language, please. But no, the point is that I've read from people who I generally, I don't even necessarily always agree with everything they say, but I'm like, okay, I can at least think about, I can weigh their opinion as more than somebody just trolling on the internet. And there are people that are, the dialogue seems to be consistent, and I don't think we've shied away from talking about that. But for me, I don't find any of the acting to be bad. You want to make the question about Anthony Ramos as, the Chicago's kingpin. Okay, maybe that doesn't quite match, but I don't think it's a bad performance. I don't see the show and go, oh, I like this, except that's bad. I think by the end of the 3rd episode, I think that the relationship with Natalie worked fairly well. I do think when they were first introduced, there was something to think about, but I don't know. So I don't have any glaring problems that I want to make sure we get to, but I'm just 1/5 of this panel. So does anybody have something that we haven't touched on yet that they think is worth, and if you don't want to be negative, then you can shine a light on something that you feel like we should prop up. But I am looking for the negative right now. Katie, you got to have something. Come on.
I will say that Anthony Ramos's speech about the crew being his people and like this, it felt a little forced, and I wasn't really sure where that was coming from. It feels a little bit cultish in a way. And
I didn't even think that. Yeah, there's some Nexium vibes there, right?
right. Yeah, it's a little like, you guys are all doing this. These are my people. Like, you guys are the ones that matter. And I was like, I don't know. I feel like you only really care about yourself and your cousin, who's now dead by the hand of one of your crew members, but they're the only ones that know this. So, I think we need a little more explanation. I know we didn't have time in the first 3 episodes to basically assemble this crew. I am curious as to why Eric Andre was one of the original members of this crew when he seems to be such a fuck up. But I feel like
we'll follow the bloodline. Probably he was a Nepo baby. One or both of his parents had been in a previous crime syndicate.
He was also an Obadiah child. So
I think you needed to have a fuck up in the cast so you'd be an opening for Riri to join.
Sure.
I just don't know why it was Eric Andre, unless, again, as we've all sort of hinted at, he's coming back in some way.
Yeah,
maybe they resurrect him, or he's not. I mean,
he could just be AI. I mean, I think that's the easiest. Yeah. They keep leaning on the rampage, and
which was a comic book character who was a tech guy who made himself his own. He stole his costume from his company, and he fought the champions a long time ago. From what I understand, I think my father read those comic books. Not me.
Right. Yeah, not you. You don't remember that. Yeah, exactly. You don't even know what a Frank Miller Daredevil is, Brody. You're just one of the kids. Yeah, exactly. So, but is there anything else that any of the 3 of you feel like we should, that maybe when you were watching, we don't need to have anything, but I just want to make sure that we leave no stones unturned.
I just wish that there was like some stakes or some type of like plot momentum, because just like, I have a suit and it's expensive and I'm a student well, I was a student, and so I need some money, is just like not doing it for me. Like there's no sense of like, where are we going? Oh no, we have to do this before X happens. Like, just pacing wise, it just feels very like, all right, so there's this girl and she's like doing crimes, and like, oh no, the guy died. She's very sad about that. Like, there is just doesn't I don't know. I do wish that there was more like momentum, and like, if this is a 6 episode series, more episode 3, I should be like, damn, like I want to know how, X, Y, and Z is going to be wrapped up. But I'm just like, yeah, I guess, she's going to have some confrontation with the gang, and then she'll leave and have the suit. Like, I just don't, I don't know. I'm hoping that there's more from this, and the hood stuff in general, if I'm being honest, is just like, it's just a weird way to use this character and introduce it into the MCU. And now, like, I don't know. It doesn't. I'm hoping that after the end of episode 3, with him like talking to things and getting visions, that we'll get like more demon stuff or something. But I don't know, like, it just feels like kind of lame, like, which is crazy because the choreography and the fight scenes have been actually really good,
Really
Yeah.
good.
like,
Yeah,
engaging,
clean.
but just like the character himself, it's just not. Maybe I'm just like bringing too much of what I know of the hood already to it that I'm expecting, and I guess I don't have that same expectation with Ironheart. But yeah, there's just some. I'm just hoping that we've done a lot of developing, and like this next episode, obviously they'll all come out at once, but episode 4 really, to me, needs to, like, some stuff's got to happen to generate some momentum to lead us into this finale. So that would be my one complaint.
And I know both Brody and Eric wanted to get in with something, but I'm going to point out that episode 4's title is Bad Magic. So if you enjoyed the magic puns earlier in this show, get ready, because there will definitely be more. Brody, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I have 2 points that tangential to what Nate said. First of all, Anthony Ramos, to me, based on his personality, he needs to have a complete story arc where he's a good guy at the end, because he's a fun, smiling, happy guy. And I feel like if he's always going to be evil, they should have cast a guy who looks like he's got scars on his face and he's mean looking and he's believable as a bad guy. Anthony Ramos is not believable as a bad guy. He's only believable as a bad guy who ends up good in the end. That being said, what is Mephisto's goal here? Right? We're assuming Mephisto gave him the cape and the power. He made a deal with Mephisto. What is Mephisto getting out of blackmailing a woman who owns a tunnel? Like, what is the deal that he's fulfilling that Mephisto cares about? I haven't figured that out yet. As far as Riri, she needs money. So she couldn't go to S.H.I.E.L.D. She couldn't go to the Avengers. She couldn't do security and be a bodyguard for extra money. Like, she couldn't have, like, oh, I'm a young girl, I got this super suit. Why don't I protect a movie theater or a liquor store or whatever and make money that way? Why am I robbing rich people and watching people getting killed and beaten up, and because I need, like, it's selfish, and we've seen that she's selfish, but there's plenty of ways with a super suit to make money.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe because
around.
this makes for a more interesting show than if she was roughing people up in the Wawa parking lot. But I do know what you're saying.
I just wanted an explanation. The same way they addressed to the mother why she couldn't create Gary, like they didn't leave it open ended. Where you're like, why couldn't she just create AI everybody? They at least addressed it. And I feel like, oh, here's money. Okay, I'll do bad stuff for money because I'm going to help people. She could have done good stuff for money. Like, she's a brilliant scientist who made a super suit. You don't think the government would pay her a lot of money? It's just weird.
Is that what they're focused on? I mean,
yeah. I mean, is that what President Thunderbolt Ross at this point is focused on? Ladastro is basically saying what Brody's saying. I would think that many top corporations, research companies would love Riri. We'll go to Wakanda and research there. I hear that Norman Osborn is usually interested in taking in interns, and I'm sure that that's somebody who she could partner up with, and there'd be no morally ambiguous avenues to take. Eric, I know you wanted to say something a moment ago.
Yeah, I think, sort of circles back to something I said up front about the issue with how they've created Riri here. It's like, it's hard to connect with her. And it doesn't mean like anti-heroes are great. Like, and usually, we all connected with Tony Soprano, for God's sake, and that guy was no walk in the park.
Thunderbolts asterisk.
Yeah, we totally because we understood them. But I, it's funny. I was thinking of a friend of mine who had a real issue with Kate Bishop, and she's like, I just had a hard time feeling much for this woman who was kind of born into so much privilege, and then is like, I don't have enough. I need to do things. And it was kind of like, well, it's an interesting take. I don't know if I agreed with it, but I really could see that angle. And I started.
Well, I mean, her boyfriend is the quarterback of the Buffalo Bills, so obviously,
right. Then she's known pain.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Quite a bit of it. I think she had access to Wakanda. She was at MIT, right?
Yeah.
So she's at the most advanced country in the universe. She's at the most advanced college in the universe. Can't seem to get her crap together in either of those places. Then, right? And so to me, it was kind of like, okay, you had access to all these things. And still it was like, I need to go into Patachi Station and get more power converters. Like, it was one of those, like, it's just hard to feel her logic in those early episodes.
Because she's not facing the thing that she needs to face. And
Right.
she has to go home now. And that is exactly
right.
where her genesis started.
But I think her getting there could have had a wee bit more kind of clean logic to it. As is, it felt kind of messy. Although I did love seeing Jim Rash as the old dean. He's cursed to that role.
By the way, he plays a dean better than anyone. What were you going to say, Brody?
Yeah. I was do you think that's why Wakanda didn't trust her with the technology? Because they gave Winter Soldier the arm, they gave Sam the Captain America suit to keep. Yeah, and she's the only one that had to give the stuff back.
Well, here's the thing. Ivan Soto is saying something that I actually legitimately, he's saying Riri isn't allowed in Wakanda anymore. Remember? No, I don't remember. So somebody remind me of that. Because and by the way, Ivan, I bet you're right. I'm just saying I don't remember it. I'm not challenging you on your memory. I'm just saying that as the only person on this show who's middle-aged, sweaty white guy, as opposed to all these kids, my brain doesn't work the way it used to. But Daniel had even said it seems weird Wakanda wouldn't have made sure she was supported because they saw the potential for her.
Yeah, it was kind of, they just cut her loose. I mean, like Spider-Man, at least like Happy kept in touch with him in the first one, so there was still a thread there, but. Here, it just doesn't. It's one of those, like, sometimes people write for convenience. It doesn't. I need to get us into this series. I need to get us into this episode, and so kind of like character logic takes a real backseat to the rest of the writing needs. And I think that's the issue here. Is when you do that, then you're putting the cart before the horse. So hopefully, episode 3, because I want to end on an optimistic note. Hopefully, episode 3 is that clean kind of reset where now. We get Riri. We get that she's kind of like, I murdered someone, but we've all been there. I mean, who hasn't?
Was she murder him or did she homicide someone?
I guess it would be more homicide than.
I don't know. She didn't know the door was going to close behind her when she flew out of there.
I'm pretty sure
she flew pretty loudly. The door is closing.
yeah. Please stand clear of the doors. There was that voice. Ivan Soto says, does S.H.I.E.L.D. even exist here? The MCU ignores the show. So I don't believe S.H.I.E.L.D. exists. I'm not even sure if S.W.O.R.D. still exists. The problem with S.W.O.R.D. factoring into both Secret Invasion and the Marvels is that no one's in a rush to kind of pull on those threads. I feel like once we get the Avengers movies, we'll have a sense on where S.W.O.R.D. is at. But I don't think there are those agencies, but we have listed a number of established in MCU continuity, also some things from the comic books. There are definitely places where she could turn, but also, as you said, she's not really dealing with her grief. And I think that is an interesting point that our buddy Daniel made, because he says that this is the one thing that's weird for me. The deaths happened so the deaths happened before Black Panther 2. She didn't seem to be in her grief in any of the scenes. That's like 1 year after the deaths. So now, 5 years later, Riri is going through this level of grief. It's an interesting point. And obviously, it's sort of the product of filmmaking and not spending much time on her. But it's a valid criticism that she's broken up by it now and, freezes and function.
I mean, think about if like your best friend got shot in the grocery store you visit every single day, and then you go off to a different country. It's easy to kind of disassociate from those things. Now she's living back home. And she's living in her old room, and she's right down the street from the garage. I feel like there is a reason, at least apart from the fact that they hadn't written that yet.
Well,
yeah. I think, she's definitely, as a character, like intentionally avoiding dealing with the feelings.
Yeah.
And is kind of being forced to confront them by this subconscious AI that was created of her dead friend that is like now standing in front of her, talking to her, and communicating to her as though it is her friend. And so she's being forced to kind of deal with this. And I do think my one prediction is like tying this magic stuff in with Mephisto, and like I think we get the classic devil deal of like, I'll bring your family back, I'll bring your friend back, or whatever kind of a thing. And then we have this kind of parallel of her already having kind of done magic and bringing her friend back to life, and then eventually will be conflicted with, joining the dark side to actually bring her friend back. And like, I'm seeing, I think that is going to be some type of the conflict that we're going to get to. So it's an interesting parallel, but I do think that there is some narrative point for her to have, like, for us not to have seen her obviously stricken with grief like when we first saw her. Because she's going to work. She's like, she definitely seems like the type of character who compartmentalizes and is like, I'm gonna put the feelings over there and I'm gonna keep making my suit, and like I'll deal with that when I have to. And now we're just seeing the have to part of like, hey, when she's freezing up.
What you said a moment ago is probably exactly what it is. You push down these emotions that are hard to deal with and you just go past it. But then her friend who died literally shows up and starts talking to her, and it's like, okay, now I have to deal with that. So I think that there is certainly something to be said for that. And I guess that Daniel Drew's theory is that working with Namor might be why the Wakandans are like, okay, well, we can't work with you because we're working with them. And he says in the comics, so that was actually not the one. There was this one. It's literally what we were saying. So Daniel Drew agrees with me. So this is the comment of the day. We have no prize for you, and we don't even have a no prize. But we very much appreciate that. I'm very interested in seeing where these 3 episodes go, which, as we're recording this, we'll actually be able to watch them tomorrow. We'll be doing another episode to cover them on Friday, the 11th of July. Just scheduling, working out that way. So everybody will have a chance to watch all 6 of them, and we will talk more about them then. We are, for people watching live, we're going to have another show that we'll switch to in a few moments. We'll still be, Eric and I will still be here talking for the Geekscape book club. We will be covering a book called Superman for All Seasons. There's a couple of Marvel odds and ends I wanted to make sure to get to in the stream. So if anybody wants to get their plugs in and go, I do want to take a moment and comment on the final Fantastic Four trailer, which I thought that the last one was the final one, but now this one's like the final, and they underlined final. As anyone who does any editing and has saved a file as final, you realize sometimes that you have to be like the final, the finalist. Otherwise I wanted to
the final.
exactly the final, but I do want to talk about that and a couple other things going on. But if anybody wants to hit the road, as they say, please let me know now.
I will have to actually pop out myself, but
you were basically who I was talking to.
Yeah, I assumed, but very excited about this trailer. It's fantastic. Can't wait to see it again. But
it's what?
She said the thing. Oh, I just said the thing.
You said it's fantastic.
And I said the thing.
I will say, if you are a Geekscape fan, and especially I know there was a little bit of talk of the undead, but we have a July 4th D&D session happening tomorrow on the Geekscape network. It is zombie themed, and I will likely be playing a Karen, so stay tuned for that tomorrow. I actually don't know what time it is, but take a look at my Instagram and all of the things at El Sassy Pants, because I will be posting about that soon, I'm sure. But love you all you Marvelates, and it was so great to hang out with you guys again, and have a great one, y'all.
Yep, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Katie. Great to see you. So yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, we've theorized that the release schedule of Ironheart might be because of this, because they really want to. Before we even look at it, I mean, let's be perfectly honest. I'm going to go to you first, Nate. They got to get this one right? They can't mess up the Fantastic Four again, right? This would be the fourth time. They really have to. It has to at least be, all right. Maybe it doesn't have to be a home run, but it's got to at least be, I don't know, a bloop single or something. The stakes have to be really high for this, right, Nate?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's going to live up to the stakes it needs to, but I do think it will be not bad. So yeah, I mean, the stakes are definitely high. I think they're definitely they have a good advantage that they've decided to kind of set it aside from the regular MCU stuff. It's like a different, I don't know if it's a different timeline or something or whatever, but the setting
universe,
yeah, different universe, so it allows them to, obviously there will be some type of linkage, but still allows them to kind of like have its own thing. I think the casting is good. But yeah, they definitely they need a win for sure. I think that they're setting this up. I think the ball is on the tee. Like, I think all they have to do is just connect, and I think, I don't think it's gonna shatter any records, but I am hoping, fingers crossed, that people will be like, oh, this was fun, and people will go see it, and it'll be like a, wow, remember when these movies used to be fun? I think it'll be something like that. I'm hoping.
Let me put out a theory for all of you. It will help Fantastic Four immensely if 2 weeks earlier Superman is a success, because then people have a feel-good feeling about a superhero movie, and they're like, oh, wow, that was really good. I think if Superman stumbles, it is a bit of a stumble, Eric, that's gonna hurt Fantastic Four potentially, no matter how great the movie is. Agree or disagree, Mr. Conner?
Agree. I think this is a rising tide raises all ships. So it's interesting too, because we have this 1 month, not even a month, like a half month of like DC Marvel, like all their hopes and dream rest on the shoulders of Clark Kent and then the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
And I mean, it really is like, I mean, imagine if Superman doesn't click with people, like what that does to Warner, what that does to DC, because they're, sort of like if Iron Man didn't click, what would have happened to the MCU? And then the Fantastic Four, to use the word reset once again, like this, Thunderbolts was a critically, it was a really great Marvel film. And it did not exactly set the box office on fire or anything, but it at least showed creatively, like Marvel was not bankrupt, that they still had some ammunition left in the chambers. And now Fantastic Four, it's like all our hopes and dreams as Marvelites, right? Like we're all praying that's just good. And again, I'm not even going in expecting it to be amazing or grand slam. Like bloop single, as you mentioned, a dying quail, like anything to just get on base with these characters. Because I mean, those last 3 movies, and you and I have been supporters and defenders of the I can't even call it straight to video one because it never really got released, but straight to bootleg VHS copy. That one, at least the cast knew what movie they were in.
Yeah.
And all the people who worked on it seemed to get it, except the financiers,
Yeah.
But everyone else came to play. And those last 3 films that were studio movies were so dull. And like, even with some good actors, it didn't matter. I mean, how do you make Michael B. Jordan less than fascinating? That's how you put him in a role that's a great role. And somehow it's just like, everything was so muted, and that last one in particular was just
with that one in particular, the
so
one
horrible.
with Michael B. Jordan, Miles Teller, and Kate Mara. It was shocking how bad that was. What say you, Brody, about the sort of the need for this film to succeed, but also it's going to help FF if Superman it makes us all believe a man can fly again.
Well, I think the fact that they're both reboots puts them in the same category.
Yeah.
They're both classic. I mean, you're talking about the number one superhero for DC and the first family of Marvel. There's a lot riding on this. And I think, yes, if Superman is a success, people will be reinvigorated into comic book movies more so. Listen, post-COVID, you still have to train people to go to the movies. And you've got to give them a reason. And as good as Thunderbolt was, in essence, it was 3 super soldiers, characters nobody knew. All we do is punch and shoot. And there was no box office draw. Other than it's a good movie, there was no like, I got to go see Chris Evans. It was like, it was a lot of B characters. Now, Iron Man was a B character at one point. I get that. But people are now coming to expect, like, when is the X-Men coming out? Right? Yeah. When is Doomsday and the Avengers? And this was sort of like, third tier. I loved it. We loved it. But it's not going to get middle America, the independents to come out to vote. So I think based on the last 2 trailers, to me, Fantastic Four looks like it's going to be terrific. The Thing looks great. I think I love the casting in the show. I love the visual aesthetics of the show, being in the 60s, but with the technological advances that Mr. Fantastic has given this world. I'm dying to see how it ties into Thunderbolts. Is it just Franklin Richards on there? Are they going for help? And then part of Doomsday is going back to their universe to defeat Galactus. I'm curious as to how it ends, but it looks great visually. And I feel like it's the 4th movie, ironically. So it's got to be good, so I'm hoping for the best, but the trailers have made me feel like they know what they're doing again. Feige's in control. The Thunderbolts was good. They know how to write and what needs to be in a movie again. They're not rushing it. It's not going to look like Quantumania. So I feel very positive. I feel like it's a guaranteed double with a possible triple. No way it's Endgame, but it looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think everything you say is pretty much spot on, Eric. I would say that it definitely looks like it's the people that at least get it in terms of they have their vision and their no pun intended for, of course, the Avenger vision and Vision Quest. This idea that they know the story, and if you're a huge Marvel fan, what that shadow looming over the city means. Okay, we know Galactus, and I don't know. I think it's very encouraging. I am excited for this. And I'm not going to say I'm not excited for Superman, but as an admitted Marvel homer, I have a lot more eggs in the basket of the Fantastic Four. What say you, Connor?
I hope, right? I go into July feeling hope that Superman on one side, Fantastic Four on the other side. I mean, this one, at least they're putting the money up on the screen. Like it looks, epic, and it looks like tonally. It's funny. It's like I was talking about recently. The Incredibles is really one of the great superhero movies, and I think like Incredibles got the thing that it seems like Fantastic Four is going after, a bit of whimsy, and so hopefully it all lands. The actors are fantastic. I forgot to mention, I just binged The Bear over the past few days with my wife. And so Chicago was all up in my head all weekend. And then I watch Ironheart, which, doesn't quite have the same sort of bona fide Chicagos of The Bear, but, at least tonally it kind of felt like I just continued on. And so for me, it's like thinking, with Fantastic Four, if they can capture even half of or a quarter of what they pulled off with The Incredibles 20 some odd years ago, and even more recently in the second one, I feel like this one could as Brody was putting. I maybe Nate said this. A double is a hope. I'm not expecting a home run, but a double would be plenty.
Yeah, and Nate, I know that it sort of started with you. Any other thoughts about this movie as we're again looking at this final trailer, and we're less than a month away from it being released?
Yeah, I mean, I think it looks cool. I think it'll be nice to have, MCU has been expanding, and I think the first four, the family, is a very important characters to that expanding world. So it's very cool to see them in MCU. I'm excited to see Galactus actually look like Galactus. So yeah, I mean, I've learned to temper my expectations a lot. So I'm very cautiously optimistic about this movie. But I think at this point, even if the movie is not good, just from what I've seen from the trailers, the style and stuff, it's going to be at least visually pleasing to watch. So
yeah,
silver lining, it will have some enjoyable element in it, I'm sure.
Right. And one thing that happened since the last time that we did the show is the announcement that John Bernthal will be in Spider-Man Brand New Day, and not playing some other character. The reputable reporting, because a lot of times you hear something like this and you're like, well, it must be a rumor that the Punisher is going to be in the Spider-Man movie. But easy to remember how he was introduced as a Spider-Man character, which it's very inconsistent with some of the Spidey that we've gotten on the screens before. But very excited to hear that we're not just getting more John Bernthal, and Daredevil Born Again, and I guess he's going to get a Disney Plus movie, but he's going to be in this movie. What did you think when you heard this, Brody?
Well, I got very excited. First of all, to Eric's point, he's in The Bear, the Punisher. And he doesn't do a lot of killing, but he's in the show, which is great. If you watch the show, you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Christian, you don't watch the show?
No.
Oh, John Bernthal's on the show, so I'm just making a joke.
Okay.
I did hear that the Punisher special may be a feature film. That there's been enough buzz, it may go into a movie. The fact that a character that shoots people in the head would be in, hey, I'm Spider-Man. There's definitely a juxtaposition there that, he fits more into Daredevil for sure. How Tom Holland's Spider-Man is going to deal with a character who's an anti-hero who he kills people. I'm interested in seeing, and we already know that at this point, the Kingpin can't appear in a movie at this point. Yet they haven't figured out the contracts yet. Yeah. So we don't know if Kingpin's going to be in the movie. So who's he killing? I'm fascinated to see how he's going to play in, but the fact that they're bringing that grittiness to a Spider-Man movie, and I cannot get enough of John Bernthal as Punisher. So I'm thrilled to see how it all works out.
Yeah. What do you think when you hear this, Eric, that we're going to get him in this movie, and if they can recreate this scene somehow from the iconic Amazing Spider-Man 129, where Spidey is in the crosshairs of Frank Castle?
John Bernthal right now is it's kind of like what Michael Caine was. He's just showing up everywhere. But in a way, similar to Michael Caine, I never complained about too much Caine. John Bernthal has repeatedly shown up, stolen whatever scene he's in. I mean, the Bear, he's only in a handful of episodes. He's a character who died before episode 1, before the pilot. And yet, every time he shows up, it's like you kind of can't take your eyes off him. He's such a fascinating actor. And they're doing that thing I think we've all talked about that they need to do, which is less sort of multiverses and getting 50 of the characters in one film, and do more team ups, do more of the ones we like Wolverine and Kitty Pryde. Spider-Man and Punisher, that sounds great because it is the oddest of couples. And tonally, I have the exact same question as Brody. How are they going to make the world of Punisher and the world of Spider-Man, both set in New York, be the same world? And that's what's kind of exciting about it is Punisher will kill first and never ask questions. And Peter, on the other hand, has never killed anything. So he's constantly going to have to get in his way.
He indirectly led to Uncle Ben's death, and he did kill Gwen Stacy by trying to save her. But we're talking from the comics. But I know what you mean.
It's not like he stabbed Uncle Ben. He didn't. He didn't throw
Aunt May
Gwen.
is dead because of him too. Aunt May is dead because of him
in
too.
the MCU. Yeah. So look, there's blood on his hand. But to both of your point, and I'm interested in your thoughts, Nate. But there is sort of this darker side to Spider-Man by being sort of a street level hero that he would cross paths with Daredevil. And there are characters like the Punisher. And I mean, if you look at sort of the origins of Cloak and Dagger and just the drug trade in New York, and they were runaways, they were drug addicts. There'd be prostitution being dealt with in these storylines. So it is a side of Spidey that we haven't seen on a screen, and by that I mean in any of the movies and certainly not the TV series, even though the Punisher was on there. So it's interesting. I just hope they don't make the mistake of, well, this is going to be a dark, gritty Spider-Man. I was like, no, he can go into those worlds as long as he's still Peter Parker, as long as he's still Spider-Man. What do you think, Nate, about the idea of this Marvel team up on the big screen between Spidey and the Punisher?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you. I am all for getting a little bit of more weight and kind of gravitas to whatever the next Spider-Man stuff is. Like, I have very much enjoyed Peter Parker as a character, more so in the later, when the few runs that let him actually get to adulthood and start dealing with adult problems and not just being like a kid. So I think having some type of weight added to that I think will be nice, but I do also I don't want it to be okay, this is the R-rated Spider-Man movie. That would be so jarring of a transition that I wouldn't enjoy that at all. So I'm hoping it's a nice balance. I really am not anticipating it being I don't think it's going to be like Spider-Man and Punisher team up movie.
Yeah,
I think he's just going to have a scene, like a prominent cameo, and then that'll be that. I think it'll be like him in the Daredevil season, where he goes to him and or he just happens to have a run-in with him or something, and they have a don't be like me, kid, stay on the high path kind of thing. And Peter's gonna be like, you're killing people,
it's like, wait, those are real bullets. What are you doing?
Exactly.
Daniel points out Johnny Storm and Peter Parker are great friends, kind of frenemies at times, but yes, they are friends in the comics. I wonder if we'll eventually get that relationship. I am still waiting for the on-screen interactions between Spider-Man and Deadpool. That's some of my personal favorite from the comics, so I can't wait to see that. The only other Marvel news that I'll just throw out there is that they say that Blade is officially back in development, which just tells me that it was never out of development. It's just taking forever and they don't know what to say. There'll be a Blade movie or there won't. That's really the takeaway on there. I do want to give Nate and Brody a chance to promote anywhere they can be found. And we will see everyone again to talk more Ironheart on July 11th, which is a Friday. That'll be 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. But Nate, until then, if people want to catch more glimpses of your very cool blinking neon sign, where do they go to do
that? You can find me everywhere at Dog Like Nate. I don't have anything to promote right now, but maybe I will in the future.
I like that. I like the sound of that, but we're always happy when you have time to be here and hang out with us. So we will talk to you soon. And Mr. Brody, for our favorite Brooklyn boy that is on screen currently, where can you be found?
Well, I wrote some wacky packages for Topps that came and went since our last episode. If you want to get them on eBay, I think you can look for AI steak sauce was my latest one that came out. Probably pay $2 for it, but that was my work. And of course, you could find me on the Brooklyn Boys podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and on most social media at David Brody. That's it. Find me.
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us for Marvel Movie Talk. Specifically, thanks to you, Mr. Brody and Nate Miller. We'll talk to you guys soon. And we always appreciate that. Great to see you guys. For everyone watching live, Now we shift into the mode of the old Geekscape book club, which is, of course, an exciting place to be because we're going to be talking about a book that I'd never seen before. So welcome to the Geekscape Book Club. As always, I am Christian Bladt, joined by Eric Conner. Eric, great to have you here. Thank you for joining me as we try to make up for lost time, one page at a time, reading comics that we have never had the opportunity to read. And we want to welcome back to the show the great Jeph Winstead, who it's a little bit of a roll of the dice that your tech's going to be working because we didn't get a chance to check it out beforehand. But Jeph, your name's not Jake. Jeph, say hello.
Could
say
be
hello to
whatever
everybody.
you want it to be. That's fine.
Yeah.
Howdy.
And making his first appearance here on the Geekscape Book Club is the great William J. Sterling.
Guy's still working on his tech setup here.
You're working on your tech setup. I'll get back.
We can't tell.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was. That's all right. We'll get back to him in a second. But I wanted to say hi to Will so that he knew that we knew that he was there. And whenever we tackle a DC book, Jeph is one of the first people that I think to talk about. This Superman for All Seasons, I found to be tremendous. I thought it was beautiful, slightly unconventional art style. It's not usually what I gravitate towards. I know, Jeph, you and I have a lot of commonality in the style of comic book art that we prefer. Were you going into this? Were you at all familiar with a Superman for All Seasons, a 4-issue series by Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale?
I was familiar because of the hype that came obviously in the years since its release in 98. And I remember it coming out at the time, but I passed on it for reasons we'll probably discuss as we get into the show here. But yeah, so I was familiar with it, but I hadn't read it. When I heard you were doing Superman this month, I thought, great, because I've read probably thousands of Superman stories, and you picked one that I never read before. So, but I appreciate the chance to read something that so many people seem to dig. So.
And that's the whole idea of the Geekscape Book Club. We make exceptions once in a while, but usually it's stuff that we haven't had a chance to read. I mean, the first one we did was Batman Year One, and it was like, yeah, I know I should have read it. But as I've said many times, even earlier today, I was always a Marvel homer, so I have a big blind spot for DC. This is a bit of a more recent book. Will Sterling, I don't know if you can say like Jeph Winstead that you've read thousands of Superman comics, but you might have. Had you read this one?
I don't know how many I've read. No, actually, I haven't. I'm very familiar with the Long Halloween, The Dark Victory, the Jeph Loeb, Tim Sale kind of typical. I think that those are the things most people have read. So I think even their approach, I'm so familiar with their Batman work or Daredevil that getting to see this for the first time, I was like, oh, wow, it's so bright and vibrant and full of life and not dark and mysterious and kind of sad in a good way, you know? With Batman, always a little bit sad, but I was like, oh, it's really, I feel like I haven't seen Tim Sale's artwork like this in a long time. So it was nice to revisit something that's now almost 30 years old, which is crazy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Eric Conner, I wanted to get sort of your big picture thoughts heading into this, because I know that you also had not read this ahead of time.
Yeah, and it's one of those, it's the fun of the book club is like the stuff that I missed, and I didn't have that much Superman in my comic book collection as a kid. I did have some Batman, but I, like yourself, Christian, was much more Marvel leaning. Not that I was a purist. There's plenty of DC in the mix. But I found like this in 4 issues did exactly sort of what it promised to do in the first page. Like I think it was the kind of maybe it was even in just the Marvel. Not Marvel Unlimited, Comixology Unlimited, or whatever, wherever I got this. So I promise you, like this is a perfect primer for Superman, and I think that's a really great way to look at it because I think it reminded me what is so fascinating about Clark Kent as a character, and it, it's one of those like I just hope the movie captures a piece of that. Because there is something really pure about him. And, a lot of us lean more towards the bat over the cape. But I found that this really showed how complicated he can be. And really also why Lex Luthor is such a fun villain. Because he totally gets how to play people like a fiddle. which he does beautifully in this. But yeah, it was a great read, very easy, fast read. I can't recommend it enough. Like, definitely, y'all should read it tonight. Don't do anything. Do it tonight.
Immediately.
We don't talk.
And it was on some of those lists of here's some stuff you could read before the Superman film comes out, which we'll talk a little bit about before we're done, talk about our expectations for that. And something about the description just stood out, and exactly what you're saying. It is kind of like, oh, you kind of know Superman. Well, how about you just read these? Like, maybe like me, you mostly know him from movies and, of course, the tremendous animated series. So I thought it was like kind of a great, like almost like an overview. You know, it was like a greatest hits package, but I don't want that to sound negative in any way. You know, it like checks all the boxes for the things you want about Superman. And some of the things that we may get in this film is, you know, this alien who shows up with these kind of abilities. Some people might react badly to that, Will. Not everybody's like, great, go ahead. You know, we'll leave you alone. Was there anything that you found particularly surprising about this story, the Superman for All Seasons, Will?
I think how much perspective they gave to Lana Lang, which is like kind of a character who gets buried a lot. If, you know, some people know her because of Smallville, but don't really understand like the history of that character, or randomly Annette O'Toole playing her in Superman 3 with Richard Pryor, arguably the best Superman movie that they made.
I mean, let's not argue. Let's just say it. It's the only good one.
Could be stated that movie was about fears of AI many years ago. I mean,
that's a great point.
Could have been telling the future. But I think that, yeah, she got a lot of screen time, so to speak, page time, in a way that, like, I think they usually want to lean towards. Most people would expect it to be about Lois's perspective, which we do get, you know, from a reporting standpoint, but it doesn't lean into too much of the Clark and Lois love story, rather the hometown love and friendship and care, you know, piece of him and his history that makes him who he is, you know, that would make him somebody who's willing to run into the fire. How did she put it? To see if anybody needs to be saved, not just because there's somebody in the building. So I thought it was a cool character to spend some time with that we kind of forget about sometimes.
Yeah, that same point, Jeph. I'm wondering your thoughts on I did find it, you know, surprising, but in an interesting way, that the focus is primarily so much, especially in the early issues, on Lana Lang compared to Lois Lane, which is just sort of, that's kind of the go-to of what you think about. That's the dynamic you're going to get from a Superman story, except for the good Superman movies 3 and 4. But you know,
right.
Yeah. But what did you think, Jeph?
Yeah, I think they're taking their cue here from John Byrne's Man of Steel. So this is 12 years after Man of Steel. So this is still that continuity for DC, the post-crisis continuity of Superman. You can actually tell. You could almost read at least the first 2 chapters of this with interspersed between issues of Man of Steel. So it's sort of designed for that. And in Man of Steel, you do get a lot of Lana's perspective as well. So. Yeah, this is, and maybe I'm being hypercritical because I am such a Superman fan. Of the things we've read, I didn't care for this. And
okay.
I think for a couple of reasons, but mostly I found it to be just a little pedestrian. And I think maybe it's because I've read the origin and the sort of setup so much that reading another interpretation of it just wasn't necessary for me. And I also found it to be a little pedestrian. There wasn't much in the way of thrills. I was fine with that in the first issue because I thought it was did a great job of establishing Smallville and a slice of Americana, and they did a great job of portraying that. I do love the colorist on this, the watercolor by Bjorn Hansen, which I think probably the unsung hero of the book in my opinion. But yeah, I felt like and maybe it's been overhyped over the years as well. So for the hype, I was a little disappointed. And so all the reasons why I skipped it in 98 proved to be true from my perspective.
Well, interestingly, some of the only Superman that I had read was, I may not have even read all the issues, but I remember my brother had bought the John Byrne Man of Steel. So I had read some of that, and there was a little bit of a familiarity, but in the way that there's a familiarity with any kind of I don't know, you can call it it's not even a reboot. It's like a soft reset, just sort of like, a lot of books would do that. New creative team comes in and they're like, all right, let's kind of set the tone for what it's going to be. I wanted to get your thoughts, Eric, on sort of, the different pacing, the different focus, as we're saying, on Lana Lang, even compared to what our visual audience sees on the screen, the John Byrne Man of Steel.
Well, I realize I think was Lana Lang a redhead in the comics originally? I know Annette O'Toole is. Yeah. I think between that and then, of course, Spider-Man's various ladies, that sort of put me on the redhead attraction as a child. I realize this now in this moment as I'm talking to y'all. Lana Lang, they made her so much more of an interesting character. They gave her some space. And Annette O'Toole, I always, I think I had a crush on her since Superman 3. But I also had a crush on Richard Pryor for very different reasons as well, mostly for his skiing abilities. So I found where it gave space to, I enjoyed. Mom, Pa, Kent, the idea of that moment when they're saying goodbye. And right now, I don't know if you guys are having this too. A lot of my friends, their kids are college age. My kids are just a little bit under that. My oldest is 16, so I'm not quite there yet. But just seeing all their sort of oh my God, my kid's graduating high school. What are they going to do? They're going to college. And even that notion of your kid could be Superman, you're still worried about him. I found that that actually got me. A couple of the things I grabbed for you, Christian, were moments of just they're worried about him in the way that parents worry. And I now, as I'm reading this, of course, I'm the parents. I'm Mom, Pa, Kent. Hopefully, I look a little better. But the truth is, I get them in ways that I didn't connect with them in the past when I looked at Superman, because I was, of course, looking much more at Superman. And this, by the way, with Lois and Superman, or Superman and Lois on CW, which I thought was actually a really good part of the sort of Superman lore in terms of really delving into how complicated human relationships are to begin with, how hard it is to be a parent to begin with, and then you throw in Superman stuff, and my God, it's a miracle any of these characters make it through. But that's the stuff that I think surprised me, was emotionally. It got me in ways I wasn't expecting it to.
Well, and when we talk about great Superman on the screen, we, of course, have to talk about Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher as the definitive Superman and Lois.
Right.
But, decent approximations. And Eric, you were talking about something a moment ago, and I was just too slow to get to it. I just, for your sake, I just wanted to remind everyone the moment where we finally got to meet Mary Jane Watson in there. And Lana Lang is really a character that I don't know that much about. I didn't watch Smallville really at all. So I don't know. Maybe that speaks a little bit to why I enjoyed this so much. What would you say, Will, to what Jeph found to maybe be some of the shortcomings of this story compared to others from maybe even, an era not long before that?
I do want to say real quick that the definitive Superman is actually Ben Affleck playing George Reeves in the costume. That is come on. That's the definitive Superman, of course.
You're right, and I'm glad.
Brief moment where the kid almost shoots him with the gun, just hair, so exciting, thrilling. I don't disagree with what Jeph is saying. I think it's it also comes, we're reading a story that's almost 30 years old, but at the same time, the character was not young even in 1998. So there was a degree to, I think that's why I like the Lana stuff so much, because it took me by surprise that wasn't a perspective that I was really anticipating getting to spend that time with. But there were big pieces of it where I was like, you know what I mean? And here we're check this, we go through this, and then Lex does, yep. It didn't feel, it feels unfair to say it didn't feel brand new, because like I said, it wasn't brand new then, but it exists as a piece of material. I think that's a great reference for people who are otherwise not comic book fans. I think that's also why Long Halloween and some of those other things are great access points for people who just want to pick up a graphic novel about a character to be a little bit of a primer. That this would be one on the list of before you see the new movie, you could check this out and be oh, okay, I feel connected to the emotional core, which I think it does really well. I think it paints this sort of Americana kind of picture in a way that sort of conveys the themes and the foundational pieces and principles of what makes Superman who and what he is. But as a hardcore comic book reader and or fan, definitely felt like it was something that I'd read 100 times, you know. So I didn't feel blown away by the overarching story itself, but enjoyed that I was like looking at these Norman Rockwell-esque postcards, you know, like that, which I think Tim Sale kind of mentions. Norman Rockwell is one of his influences at the beginning. That like it was great for that, but not necessarily as like an incredible story.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and so Jeph, I think that what both of you are saying, really what the four of us are saying, is that this is a story more for guys like, you know, not just guys, but people like me and Eric that don't have as much of a background for printed Superman stories. And in making it accessible, like in making Superman for everyone, you're actually kind of discounting the fact that the hardcore, the people you always count on, like buying every new Superman title and supporting you, they might get left in the wayside. You'll be able to understand. I'm saying, is it like Kiss deciding to put out a couple of disco songs and then they get on the radio, but then
those disco songs are fucking great.
Yeah, that's right. That's the right answer.
Yeah.
Right. I was trying to trick you there, but but
you would have been thrown right off with the wrong answer. Just so
no. But do you think that that maybe they tried a little too hard to make it for everyone, which makes it for, you know, that alienates the people who had, you know, kept Superman alive and continued to buy his book? I mean, so 98 is 60 years after the character was introduced, you know?
Yeah, you see comic book companies do these little cyclical moves where they're like, it's issue number 1, and we're just kind of refocusing back on a thing to sell books and move and get the outsiders, you know, like kind of maybe invested in comic book collecting, and then they can do that moving forward. So it's definitely like a... Yeah.
I think Marvel does it more than DC does, because there have been maybe 4 Amazing Spider-Man #1s. Maybe it's not the last 10 years, but definitely in the last 15. And if you told me there were 5 Amazing Spider-Man #1s in that time, I'd believe you. So are they trying too hard, Jeph, to make it for everyone, which in some ways makes it for no one?
Oddly enough, I mean, I think it is proven to be a gateway comic. I mean, it's obviously what its legacy has been. At the time, I don't think that was the case. I think it's actually more of a reflection of the aging audience. So when I bought Man of Steel, I was 13 years old. I bought it off the spinner rack at a local grocery store. By the time this comes out, I'm 25, and there are no comics in grocery stores. And so you're buying it at the comic book shop. Yeah. And so it's for comic book fans. It was a prestige format book, so you're already paying a premium price. You're paying $4.95 for the individual issues. Everything from the trade dress just looks more for an adult audience versus a kid audience. I think even the storytelling, which, you know, depending on when you read it, it may actually work for you better. But even the storytelling here is not. It's a 13-year-old kid. Myself at 13 would have found this very boring. There's some action, but even the action that is in the story is sort of undercut by voiceovers from other characters. This is always, comics do this a lot, and movies sometimes do this too. But one of the problems with that is you don't let the action breathe. You're sort of pushing the action into the background while reading about Lois's thoughts on why she finds Superman so intriguing, while at the same time you're watching him stopping a train from running over a little girl. It just sort of it diminishes that stuff. But yeah, I mean, when this was coming out, I was probably reading 4 Superman books a month. You know, they were doing the weekly Superman between the 4 main titles. And it's like, yeah, she's the last thing I need is another
one.
Thing.
Yeah.
But it's just a retelling of this and that. So, you know, for me, that was the biggest problem with it. And of course, I'll be honest, I didn't buy it because when I saw that cover, that the character design for Superman here, I'm just not digging it. And like I say, I've read easily hundreds, if not thousands, of Superman comics. I've seen many different artists represent the character in many different styles, and this sort of clutch cargo, big chin. I couldn't get into it. It was way too cartoon. The other shots in the book I liked. You know, the shots of the diner in Smallville, all the landscapes are beautiful. I think maybe largely, like I say, because of the watercolor artist. Really thoughtfully considered, but I just really didn't like the character design here.
What's your opinion of Jay Leno?
I have the same opinion. I did not watch the Tonight Show, so maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's a phobia.
Intimidated by the large chin.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't like the chin
Eric,
so much as long as it doesn't look like the mouth can't move. It's just really
well,
strange.
yeah. It's in a way, and I kind of like the unique style, but to Jeff's point, for what we're seeing right now for our visual audience, it is almost like, is this a Dick Tracy villain named Smallface? Because there's a lot of like head, but the face is just there in the middle. But obviously there is something about that. And Eric, what you were saying earlier, this idea of, my kids are younger, but because I have a young hot wife, a lot of my friends have kids that are older, and the number of people that I know from college and high school whose kids are like going off to college themselves this year, I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be ready for that in, like 9 years when it happens to me. And, I'm teetering on 60. Oh, I just bummed myself out. But I do think there's that idea of addressing, and I don't know if the TV series did this, addressing the idea of leaving behind Smallville. Yes, he can be there like that. He can come back to Ma and Pa Kent. But things can happen like that. Ask Thanos. And the idea, their friend from Smallville High, the other character, who's like, yeah, you guys are all fine. And that is great to see you, Clark. The rest of us are just here. Just going to Metropolis would be exciting, let alone being a superhero and saving the world multiple times over. And you've been to space. In fact, you were born, in space, essentially. What do you think sort of about that from, again, as as was described on an earlier show, as a sweaty white middle-aged man? You do sometimes watch movies where you start to think like, no, you know what, Will Smith? Parents do understand, okay? We know, and you're just trying to do a bunch of dumb shit. So sometimes you find yourself connecting to parents for movies, TV, your books, anything that you read as a kid. And of course, you didn't even think about the parents, Eric.
Well, I remember many years ago when I was, for a few years, I was Dean of Students over at New York Film Academy out here in California. And my wife and I were talking about the dean in Animal House. And for the first time, I sympathized with him a little bit. Because I was like, man, he's just trying to run a school. And I mean, these kids are up to all sorts of shenanigans. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God, I'm siding with Dean Wormer here over Blutowski. This isn't right. And I think here the idea of the place is called Smallville, right? It is the ultimate Norman Rockwell-esque small town Americana. And that idea of it was too small for Lana as well, I thought was kind of interesting. Like, right, the idea of like, yeah, any place would be too small for him, for Clark, for Superman. But the idea of like kind of wherever you grow up, at some point you feel like you've outgrown it. There's a reason, I don't know, I'm not here with my microphone in Delaware. There's a reason why you're not still in Poughkeepsie. We basically...
I went to college in Poughkeepsie, but I did grow up in Smallville, New York.
Right.
Address. But I did grow up in a very small town, and I've always sort of connected to the notion of Smallville. I mean, I use the example that my high school graduating class was 63 kids, and that's 2 towns put together. And I was like 45 minutes from New York City, so this wasn't like, Smallville's like just way out there. It's in Kansas, right?
Kansas for a reason.
Yeah, but it's like, it's not like, Kansas City, Missouri is just, a little bit of a drive. No, it's like Nowheresville. Is that accurate, Will and Jeph?
I also grew up in a very small town.
It's true.
That was in San Diego County technically, but felt more like you were in a tiny little town in Texas than anything else, with a lot of cows and horses and things. And so I think I did gravitate to Superman for that reason, because I always felt a little bit like a fish out of water in that kind of place, destined for whatever big city dream bullshit. And here I am, barely eking out a living, trying to but that's what Superman had to do to pay his bills. So I guess it's not so.
Interestingly enough, Will's prom Will's prom date was a tumbleweed. So it was just it was just the only option.
Wasn't that like a Spike the Dog's joke on the Peanuts or something?
It actually might have been, yeah.
Yes.
And look, if I'm gonna steal from anybody, I want to steal from one of the greats.
That's right.
Snoopy's
Carl
brother,
Schultz,
Spike,
also from small town,
which
St. Louis, I think, Minneapolis.
Minneapolis,
Yeah.
No, actually, it's St. Paul.
St. Paul. That's
the sidecar.
The other Twin
city.
City.
That's right. The other Twin City. Anyway, but so it did that accurate. I think that Norman Rockwell vibe is there, and so even Jeph and what you're saying, it doesn't feel as present there in the Superman bits, but it definitely feels there. It feels appropriate in the Smallville bits.
Well, Jeph, making us a four-headed John Cougar Mellencamp tribute, I believe you also were born in a small town with small town ways. Just talking to you about, like me, when grocery stores stopped having comic books on the spinner rack, you had to order your comics from Westfield Comics like I did. Right. And once a month, when they all showed up, and I was like, great, I've got 35 books that I need to read now. So do you feel that this story at least captures kind of that tone of Smallville, which maybe you'd read other books that had done it? Just for me, I thought it was an interesting take.
Yeah, I thought the first chapter was the best chapter by far for that reason. And I grew up in the Smallville version of Kentucky. The town was called Cub Run, and we didn't have a red light. And it took 5 towns to make a graduating class in my high school in the 60s. So it was Smallville was sort of like Metropolis by comparison. So
I'm going to interrupt for a second, Jeph, because you literally out small towned me because your school took 5 towns. But here's the thing. We had one traffic light at my town. So clearly you win on both of those points.
Right. They stole it from your town, actually.
Right. Sure, you would have had it, but some young toughs thieved it. But I'm sorry. But Cub Run, by the way, being the name of your town, all I can think of is Harry Carey. Cub Run! Cub Run! But anyway, that's all I can think of.
But yeah, so it definitely captured that well. That was, I did feel an emotional connection to the first issue, and that's why I was sort of really disappointed in the next 3, particularly as they went. I think the some of the storytelling got a little sketchy, especially by the time we get to the 4th issue. It was also a very fast read, but I'm not sure if that's good for your money. There's a vast number of double-page spreads in this book, which is odd for a book that isn't really action-oriented. And it's so funny. I think about how just, maybe 6 years before, the guys who went off and formed Image were getting criticized roundly by their peers for having books loaded with double page spreads. And that obviously rubbed off because they're doing it here. Sometimes it's just a double page spread of mostly a cape. So
it would be for at least someone at Image, no names. It would be a double page spread, but somehow all that space, you'd make sure that you didn't have to draw any feet. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No names. I'm not going to say.
No, I know.
It's interesting that you're talking about, because again, I was out of college by the time this came out, but I wasn't buying Superman books. So had I read it, I would have probably seen it in a way. I can imagine a kid reading this and being like, this isn't Superman from the cartoon, or if it's a younger era, this isn't like the Super Friends Superman or the Christopher Reeve Superman. I can see this being alienating for kids because there's different levels to adult. Like on this very show earlier this year, we talked about Daredevil Born Again by Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli, which I did read as a 9-year-old, and rereading it as a 49-year-old. I could not believe that I read it as a 9-year-old. Most of it was way over my head, but there's enough where I'm like, so I can see like a 13-year-old being like, I don't get all this, but Daredevil's house just blew up and the Kingpin just beat the tar out of him. And then this is like, oh yeah, this is like, Prairie Home Companion tells a Superman story, which is beautiful storytelling. But maybe that's why it is this prestige format, Jeph. You're talking about having to buy 4 Superman books, and then one of them is going to be, I don't know what this would have been, like $2.50 or $3.
$4.95.
Jeez, that's what they cost now.
Yeah, well, regular comics were $1.99 in '98. So
I remember the $1.99 era, like still under $2.
Yes,
I remember holding the line at $2.99. That was their
yes,
and that was only
DC,
like 10 years
and DC
ago.
managed that for a while. So to their credit. But
I remember just to lean into the old man thing for a moment. When Marvel went from 75 cents to $1, there were creators, and you hear people at cons would be like, "Well, that's it. That's the end of it." It went because usually it used to go up 5 or 10 cents, and like when they went up a whole quarter, it's like, all right, they're just gonna be sky's the limit. And they were right, by the way. It was like you blinked and they were $1.25. Yeah, and I guess it's not really the way to look at it now in terms of the cost of the individual issues, because we're consuming them the way that they are. And we did do Long Halloween here because it was a very accessible story to us. We've done multiple Batman stories here. What were you going to say, Eric?
No, I was just saying you were giving me some vibes like the old man from Dirty Dancing talking about the death of the Catskills. It was almost identical.
This is basically the same thing. Yeah.
When it went over 60 cents, we were done.
I mean, they were 65 when I started. No, they were 60 when I started. So boy, that math was a lot. It had to teach me math, because if they were 50 cents, it would have been easy. I would have known how many I could get.
They got us.
Yeah, and I had to make some hard decisions.
And not to get too in the weeds, but Marvel went through a phase where like their most popular books were an extra nickel compared to the other books. So there were different prices even within Marvel at different time periods.
Yeah, they for a few months they printed 2 editions, one on newsprint and one on the glossy paper, and then all of a sudden the glossy paper became the other one. Well, what are some other ways you remember the comics industry pulling scams on us as kids? There's a lot of them now that I'm thinking.
Yeah, always going back to number 1 always felt like a scam to me, because I get mad and frustrated because inevitably they're going to go back to the legacy numbering at some point to celebrate the big number, so it always seems disingenuous. Rebooting things. I don't like a universe like reset, because they always go back to the original. You know what I mean? Like they tried the New 52 that they promised so many times was going to be a real thing, and eventually everybody knew that they were going to go back. So like I don't know. There's comic books. The companies, I don't know, with their media arms though. It's like they're always complaining about being poor and broke and not able to pay all these people enough money, but it's like somebody at the company somewhere who has the deals with Warner Brothers and Disney and all of that, somebody's making a lot of money, but the actual artists, writers and colorists and letterers and everything, all these people, they definitely get screwed over. Like what? It's like somebody, I just read a story. I'm trying to remember who and what it was, but there was a big comic book guy who didn't get paid for anything for.
Wow.
You can that happens often.
You could slip a lot of names into that
story. Yeah. I think that's like half of everybody in comic books, if not more. But yeah, so it's just notoriously like everybody's crying about how it's a dying medium and nobody's getting paid enough and it's going to be unsustainable. But then there's the Disney of it all, where you're like, well, somebody's getting fucking paid, so clearly it's not about that. It's about
actually, one final thought here from the one pun.
Foil
covers and holograms. And don't forget about the pre-bagged with a card.
Yeah.
And I've always made the point, they started bagging up the comics and hoping you didn't open them when the stories got the worst, of like the big X-Men crossovers. Executioner song was the least impressive. And that was the one that was pre-bagged with a card. It's like, oh, you didn't want me to read that. By the way, thank you, the Key Files, for finding us. Oh, snap. I didn't know you were on. I found the link on accident. That's how I know we're doing a good job promoting the show. When you but we appreciate everyone who is here. The interesting thing is sort of about the economics of comics. When you kind of walk away from it largely for a long time, like I did, now, well, it's dirt cheap to read comics because of Marvel Unlimited, DC Universe Infinite, and look, the various ways you can get a free trial or you get a deal for a few months. The idea, but even when you pay full price, I don't know, it's like $10 for a month, and then like, I could literally read, like 10 comics every day. I could read 300 comics this month if I really set out to do it. I'll get that $10 worth. So. The economics now, and I had heard something a long time ago that at least for Marvel, they continued printing comics at a loss just to have new content for what would eventually become the MCU, but also various tie-ins. And whether that's literally true, Eric, I see it to an extent, and I think we get a lot of indications that think of the books that you and I have talked about on here. How well was that Marvel Knights Daredevil run selling where they introduced Echo? Oh, I don't know, but they got Echo out of it,
Right. Well, and I think that's this idea of like branding became so much a part of comic book lore, right? Like I remember the New 52 and how exciting it was until it wasn't, right? But that idea of so much of that,
for some of us, never exciting, never once exciting.
Right. So
to the two at the bottom.
Right.
Yeah.
That was when I was out. I bounced out in 2011.
Well, 52 bitten, twice shy, I think is the term.
That's right.
It's good.
It's my favorite Great White song.
But even like we talked about this a little bit on the Christian's, one of his many other shows. The idea of AMC theaters right now. You go there, they have popcorn buckets for every movie, including my favorite still, which I did not buy because I want to stay married. The Accountant 2 has it was an RV because that's why we go to the movies, to get a themed popcorn bucket centered on a assassin on the autism spectrum. His brother's RV. I mean, it was one of those like trying so hard to make it a thing.
Yeah.
So stop trying with fetch. It's not going to happen, to quote Mean Girls. Never get to quote that enough. But I think that's one of those issues that we run into with these, right? It's like when you make it, I mean, $5 an issue or $4.95 an issue, and that was 30 years ago, right? Jeph, like that's insane. Like what kid would, if they actually had an allowance to work off of for buying their comics, what kid would then put, bet everything on black, basically, so that you, in essence, like couldn't get your 6 other titles that month? I'm shocked that it cost that much. And
that's even if a kid.
There it is.
Yeah, that's even if a kid managed to stumble into a comic book shop, because you weren't going to find it. At your local.
It was hard. I had to. I mean, my brother was 5 years older, so he could drive me, and he still liked comics to some extent. But I mean, it was a good, at least 20-minute drive to a comic book shop if I wanted to actually go to a store. And yeah, I do think that there is this market to what Eric's talking about. The collectible market, and the one pun has this point. I'm waiting on my People versus Larry. Yeah.
Warning: it may have a hole in the bottom.
The Key Files uses Marvel Unlimited regularly. I've done so for the last 4 years. It's great. I don't know what it means for creators in terms of like the digital content and the royalties. Look, in my household, someone gets these magic green envelopes of royalties from TV shows that she's worked on, and sometimes they're much larger than you'd expect, and you don't know the different ways. I hope that people who create these stories are at least in some way compensated for the fact that I can subscribe for $10 and get this. No one from Superman for All Seasons made any money off of me reading it, because I read it the old-fashioned way. I went to the Burbank Library and I took it out and I read it, and I was really excited about it. I read it in like December. I read it so long ago, but I made some notes to make sure, because I knew we weren't going to talk about it until the movie came out. And I do want to talk a little bit more about this book in particular, but do either Will or Jeph, is there a different Superman story that you're like, oh, this one would be a better representation of sort of what this comic brings to an unfamiliar reader, but also better for long-term readers? Is the John Byrne Man of Steel that, or is that a wonky in some way? I'll ask you first, Jeph.
Man of Steel is for me. Now, I have no idea if you were giving it to a 13-year-old today, how that would feel. But I've even read Jeph Loeb Superman stories that are much more accessible for kids. It's not really an origin story, but the Superman Batman title that he did, what was that, maybe 2005, with the first 2 issues with Ed McGuinness on art. That's very kid-friendly and really exciting, and just like zany, just batshit crazy stuff, which I think a kid would like. The Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman is sort of a love letter to the Silver Age, while also just sort of making the Silver Age stuff work for a modern context. And it's I think that would be cool for a kid. A lot of wild sci-fi ideas in there. So yeah, as far as this sort of Smallville, the origin type stuff, yeah, I guess I would have to go with Man of Steel. You do get touches of this. I remember Dan Jurgens in the post Death of Superman era, so about this time period, actually, doing prestige format Superman Doomsday follow-up. And woven into that was Clark reminiscing about something that happened at Smallville that killed most of their cows. And it sounds really like boring, but they managed to weave it into the story in a very heavy action story. And they managed to weave it in a way that was pretty touching, and had all the great stuff with Pa Kent teaching him lessons about what it is to be a man, how to accept loss, etc. So you can find this. The nice thing about Superman is you can read. There are obviously bad Superman stories, but most good creators will fit all the quintessential Superman stuff into, if not a single issue, at least a single storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Now Jeph Loeb was also writing the book at a time where I didn't much care for it. He was writing the regular titles. Let's see, about early 2000s, maybe 2001, and there was a storyline they did where Superman was going to therapy, which is I would just reject altogether. And this had shades of that. Like there's this weird thing in issue 3, he has a sort of crisis of confidence because Luthor has sort of tricked him into shockingly trusting a woman named Toxin. When a woman comes to you and says that she's been inspired by you to be a superhero, and she's dressed like an S&M version of the Mad Bomber, bad bombs at midnight from The Tick, and she calls herself. That's true, but if you're Superman, you might want to ask some questions. Why did you call yourself Toxin and not Cure Girl or something? So Superman has this crisis of conscience. He spends the whole 4th issue basically pouting, and there's a flood heading for Smallville, and he spends the night pouting in bed before he gets up the next morning and does anything. It's the most bizarre. I didn't understand the timeline there. I didn't understand what they were going for. There were people in downtown on Main Street on Smallville in rowboats. Like you could have solved some of this a few hours earlier if you just gotten off your butt and sucked it up a little bit. So it was really strange, not really Superman behavior for me. So like I say, the first issue I thought was pretty good, and I was hoping I was anticipating better as it went, but it just kind of fell apart.
Will, do you feel like this is a good representation, or does something come to mind that would be better as like, somebody should read, a different trade paperback or a run ahead of the Superman movie that might do a better job?
Yeah. I think Jeph kind of checks all the boxes. I do think Man of Steel is kind of the definitive one as far as like comic collectors who know these things sort of go. Like everybody does kind of default to that because it had been a while, and also it was like in the 80s when that was coming out, the sort of first era of like modernizing this stuff and trying to make it a little bit more about something real as opposed to campy 60s 70s kind of not necessarily dark themes. But I think this book serves that purpose. I don't think it's bad by any means. I think it's just it is pretty by the numbers in terms of reintroducing things that everybody's pretty familiar with. I will say, it just depends on the generation. Like I know Geoff Johns' The Secret Origins or whatever that came out, whenever that came out, like reading that book. I remember when I first read it, I was like, oh, this is cool. There's some little bits in here that are nice. But then in reading this for all seasons, I was like, oh, Geoff Johns just did the same thing as this. Like everybody does this at some point to some degree. So it's not, I think that's the thing that makes it feel like, oh, it's one of those where everybody's sort of just reintroducing you to the emotional mythos of Superman internally and externally. And after this is over, we'll go back to whatever sci-fi adventure he's having. So I think that this is perfectly serviceable. I'd say is more so than maybe some others. But I wouldn't say it's like the definitive one.
Right. Well, we have talked a lot about the Smallville aspect of it, and we should definitely touch on some of the Metropolis. I think that I haven't seen the new Superman film yet, but I feel like this is sort of very in line with what I've seen in the trailers. The Lois in this kind of is like a marvelous Mrs. Maisel, ironically, version of Lois. What did you think as you read this, Eric? Because you specifically sent me this panel where he wants to know how she was able to get on board a submarine, and we all have our little secrets, Clark. I'm sure even you do. It's almost written in like that Hell's a Pop and like banter from like the 30s.
Well, and one of the things that is not in here very much is the idea of Lois and Clark's bond. Like, that's not really here. His bond with Lana, sure. But with Lois, beyond just she's cool, fast talking. I did like the LL connection between Lana and Lois. That's one of those always wondered about. So I'm glad they put a hat on that.
See, not so wild that he would say Martha at the end of Batman vs Superman.
Yeah, right.
You know what? This is a good point. Well,
we've joked about that a lot. You imagine if his mom's name was Phyllis. Like, he'd be dead, he'd be dead, everyone would be effed. So let's hear it for the Marthas. Lois here is dare I say a cartoon, right? She's kind of broadly drawn. Even that moment when she's on the submarine and we just see her sort of shapely figure, and she has the word like "ulp" or something instead of "gulp." She had some kind of weird text thing there for like how she expresses fear or whatever that was. So I think like Lois maybe got a little bit of short end of the stick on this storyline here with these four. And I think part of this is what you gents were talking about before about like kind of checks off boxes. So Lois is just sort of, no pun intended, I promise, a box to be checked. She's not a fully fleshed out character here. It's much more like a one note kind of thing. And it works for what it's about. Obviously she's always trying to get that story, but she collapses in a heap. Lex has poisoned everyone in town. I mean, it's kind of like, if you ever remember the original Super Friends, the one that had the Legion of Doom in all its glory, and the first episode of that was, we're going to turn everyone in the world to cheetahs and bizarros. And it's like the most preposterous plot line in terms of a supervillain. And that's what this felt like here was, right.
Wasn't that the same plot of Wonder Woman 1984? Or no, I might be mistaken, actually.
Everyone became a cheetah only. No bizarros.
Actually, everyone became Chester Cheetah from the Cheetos.
That's much better.
Fingers being the most.
Yeah, that actually would be better.
I can't touch my keyboard.
Yes.
Well, you brought him up, and I do want to talk about Lex in this. And to me, when I think of Lex Luthor, partially I think of an animated bald one, but I do tend to think of the film version. I tend to think of Gene Hackman first. Sure. I always think of Gene Hackman. And I felt like we were kind of getting a Gene Hackman vibe. But let me ask you first, Will, how did you feel about the portrayal of Lex Luthor in this story specifically?
This was even though I felt this at a lot of places, the story where I felt the most of like, yep. Like we're checking all these boxes of Lex, and then he's got the thing, he's in the way, he doesn't like the alien, he's got this like whole, like it's all true of that character, but it felt pretty safe and by the numbers. I feel like that's a phrase I keep using, but it kind of, I think how this story plays out is in a very safe, sort of inoffensive way, not giving you anything that even if you know about these characters like a little bit, you're like, oh yes, this that's right, this is how Lex is supposed to behave. I liked his weird haircut situation, his like in the middle stages of hair loss kind of vibe going on. Does have sort of a Gene Hackman kind of look and aesthetic to it, which I think is fun from a character design standpoint. I think I liked the character design more than I liked the writing of the character, because it was just not exactly what I'm used to seeing when I think about Lex or looking at Lex. So it was fun. I think the art is the standout for me throughout this whole thing, and Tim Sale's style and kind of giving new life to the visual side of these things, as opposed to the writing. But not, he wasn't reinventing the wheel, so to speak. I think with Lex's behaviors and motivations and stuff, it was all pretty standard.
Right, and we have seen multiple representations. We're about to get Nicholas Hoult as Lex. We had Jesse Eisenberg. We have to acknowledge that we had Kevin Spacey, but I always point out that who knew that his private life, Kevin Spacey was more evil than Lex Luthor could ever be. So in a way, he was too good for in that casting. But I'll always think of Gene Hackman. So Jeph, as someone who was largely dissatisfied.
Not John Cryer?
Well, he's like his nephew.
How dare you?
He's his nephew. He's not actually
He break dances at one point. Isn't that worth something?
That's a great point. He even calls him Uncle Lex in Superman 4. But Jeph, was a big part of this maybe what Will's saying, the paint by numbers, follow the blueprint for here's a Lex Luthor-led crisis on infinite pages?
Well, yeah, the portrayal of Lex here is understandably right out of Man of Steel. He's his exact same character, and to the point that almost the submarine plot is a rehash of the second issue of Man of Steel. They just, instead of a submarine in that, it's a yacht that's taken over by some terrorists. Lex may or may not be behind it himself. It's just this, it literally, to Will's point, is paint by numbers. It's just the same plot, changing the set pieces a little bit. So yeah, but as far as the portrayal goes, it's right in line. I will say, like, the Lex being a bastard here is well captured. It's the best Lex being a bastard is in a backup story in Superman that John Byrne did, where he's toying with a waitress at a small town diner, where he basically gives her the promise of a better life. I think if she basically becomes his concubine or whatever.
Oh, okay.
And it's a wild, it's a very, I mean, he's an evil man when you read that. It's more evil than like the kryptonite necklace on Superman in the Christopher Reeves movie. So
yeah, by the way, that sounds like a John Byrne story to me.
It does. Yeah.
And Eric, you had chosen the image that we're showing here, and I felt like he looked more like Mr. Misitzelplex, or however you say that guy's name.
Oh yeah.
Because just sort of that look. And
the image of him showering is going to haunt my dreams for a while.
Yeah. By the way, Key Files wanted to know, was Lex a redhead in the comics before he was bald?
Only his barber knows.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's that simple. And you asked for it, you got it. So
any questions about this, but we'll move on.
Yeah, as we start to wind down, Eric, I wanted to get your thoughts on Lex in this, and if you felt like, as somebody who maybe like me needs a little bit of a paint by numbers Superman story, did you feel like this worked?
I feel like Lex is a character that, even for the Marvel side of this Zoom or this StreamYard, I feel like we know Lex better than this. I think even this sort of casual fan kind of knows Lex better than this. So I agree. I feel like along the lines of Lois, I just think like as much real estate as Clark and Martha Kent got, and Lana and Superman and Clark, even Clark's old, dog from high school got some much love here. But I found the, Lex stuff was a little broad, and, he, again, the mind game thing he's quite good at, and I enjoyed that piece of it. But there wasn't much depth to Lex here, nothing new. I agree about the hair being balding instead of bald. So it's like they combined heads. They took a few different Lexes, including the Gene Hackman Lex, and they put him into a blender and pureed it, and all of a sudden this is the Lex we get, with his balding look and the way his body reacts to water apparently is strange. I think they could have gone a little deeper, and I think part of this is because these 4 issues are done with the notion of 4 seasons. It was like a playlist or greatest hits for people our age than it was for, this isn't a title I felt like I would have had to rush out to in my case, Books and Tobacco from Concord Pike in Wilmington, Delaware. I wouldn't have felt the need to run to get the next issue because it didn't necessarily have that beautiful momentum you will get in some of these short run series. And I think Lex's storyline is one that it was hurt by that approach, since it wasn't like we were watching the gathering storm of Lex. It was just more of like, a gentle rain of his usual evil shenanigans.
The quiet storm, as it were. Yes. Now, Jeph, you are not one to see films in the theater. So I'm wondering, do you have any intention of seeing Superman, making an exception, or will its eventual digital release, which could be as soon as 45 days, so not as long as it used to be, or are you planning on seeing it in the theater?
Yeah, I'm anticipating October, so I'll just wait.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll ask. Yeah, it'll be a long Halloween for you.
I am optimistic. based on what we've seen so far. In some ways, the more I see, the less optimistic I get. So I kind of hope at this point they just stop showing more footage from the film. We just let us see it all at once. But
you're gonna have all these months of know everythings like me and Eric Conner. And somebody who's a little bit more humble in his assessment, Will Sterling. You're gonna have months of us, trying to be like, you should see it. But I expect good things. I'm very optimistic. Will, for years, Will and I have been podcasting together for more than 12 years now. I always want to like everything. Now, there's times like when Eric Conner and I sat down to see Madam Web on Valentine's Day last year, we knew we were really going to be in for it. Like, we didn't have the expectation that this was going to be good, but I still wanted to be surprised. So I always want to enjoy a Superman movie when I see it. I loved Superman as a kid. One of my earliest birthday parties was to see a re-release of the first film in the theater. So I am always cautiously optimistic. James Gunn has me with good feelings, and I know we've talked about it on other shows, Will, but as we're now just less than 2 weeks away from the release of Superman, what are your feelings about it, and what you're hoping to get out of the experience?
I will say that I saw a trailer for it just before F1. I saw F1 on Friday. And because I wanted to see like a big IMAX movie, and I sat in like the perfect seat in terms of like and this was a trailer I had not seen for Superman, and it was the first time that I saw something that I genuinely felt like, oh shit, it's like a Superman comic book movie, like it features all these characters in a certain way that like I still, the jury's out on whether or not they will or won't look like cosplay. I still think they look a little bit like cosplay. And there's things that I don't like in terms of like cinematography is a little too digital to me. I think it's a little too sharp. Like there's those nitpicks, but it finally struck me that I was like, oh, this is they've never made a Superman movie that's full of all the things that the comics tend to be full of. It's like, even though I was a big fan of Man of Steel, very brooding, very not I think what most people had read. The Christopher Reeve movies, obviously him being the be all end all for playing the character, but budget wise you only could do so much, and this is like the first time that I was like, oh, it's so bright and colorful, and there's all these other comic book characters. It feels like opening up something from a John Byrne era or a Dan Jurgens minded sort of story. So more excited, I think, than I was. I still have the superhero movie fatigue, but it definitely caught my interest more than it had.
Yeah, no, and I'm looking forward to not just seeing it, but getting a chance to speak with you about it after the fact. I know, Eric, you're also going to one of those early Amazon Prime showings that even us with the AMC A-list, we had to actually pay for these, Will. Can you believe it? We actually spent money. I know it wasn't
first
covered.
taste is free, and then they get you.
Yeah,
so
and then they get you. But as we tease next month in a moment, wanted to get your thoughts on like I said to Will, being about 2 weeks out of James Gunn Superman.
Well, we'll see if DC's gonna build a sturdy center to what they have in store. I mean, in our previous chat on this very network, we talked about Fantastic Four and Superman both have this very difficult job, which is to make sure they can kind of keep up an entire franchise. Imagine if Iron Man didn't work, MCU would have collapsed into itself like a dying sun. And I think here James Gunn, his bona fides are terrific, so his name alone gave me a lot of hope for this. I'm liking the previews I see. I think sometimes a little bit of the dialogue I'm hearing might be a touch hokey, but I'm okay with hokey. I think James Gunn knows how to use hokey, so hopefully in a larger context of a scene, it will actually play quite well. So I am definitely optimistic. The fact is, you and I both were spending $20 extra of our own hard-earned money to go out there and see it on a Tuesday night.
And that's not counting popcorn. So let's be honest. I'm spending $75.
Yeah, the popcorn. Listen, the
God.
popcorn's always a given. It's going to happen.
Wait, the IMAX isn't included for your.
So these screenings aren't. No, you can always go to an IMAX, but these you had to buy these through Amazon Prime.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay.
And the most interesting thing that I think from a filmmaking standpoint, Will, I think this might speak to you a little bit. James Gunn has said that he didn't do sort of like a jukebox movie, so there isn't like, Superman has a cassette of the soundtrack that he listens to all the time. And, it's actually, I just wanted to see what the cassette was.
Yeah.
And
it took a minute for it to not filter it out.
Exactly. In any case, so it's going to be the score. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting because I'm sure he can do that. But
you mean it's not going to be like the Tank Girl soundtrack?
I didn't say that. Yeah. So we'll have to see. I'm excited to see how it is and talking with all of you about it. Jeph, it'll be, long Halloween, as I said. Here on this show next month on a day that will be determined in the near future. It's not Lex Luthor taking a shower. I forgot that I hadn't changed
That's a great one shot, by the way.
It is actually very funny. I should probably bring it up there. I mean, it really just kind of it just speaks to us. Yeah, exactly.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
I'm looking for something. No, I don't want to do that. Yeah.
And you thought Kingpin showering in Daredevil Born Again was bad.
That jogged so this would run.
That's true. And what we will cover, we're going to probably do a few Fantastic Four stories, but in July here on the Geekscape Book Club, we'll be talking about sort of this life story, this 4-issue series that is the different decades of the story of the Fantastic Four, which I think will be very much on point with the narrative for that film. And we will do sort of like we did with this one. We'll piggyback that on one of our Fantastic Four movie episodes. So look for that in July, and look for our show Marvel Movie Talk July 11th. We'll be talking more about Ironheart. But I wanted to give a chance to you gentlemen to direct people where they can find you and any of your possible projects online. Will Sterling, where can people find more of you in addition to regular appearances on the Blattcast, BLADTCAST?
At Will Sterling _ on all the things. I think I have a book called Fame by Misadventure that people can buy, and a movie that's at festivals right now called A Cell Phone Movie, which is a delightful little comedy. And then the upcoming That Friend, which you, Christian, talk about top secret Amazon screenings. You didn't have to pay any money to see this movie, and you saw it 2 years before the rest of the world.
I saw 2 years before the rest of the world, and I was excited to see that, and I can't wait for people to see That Friend. Yeah. But check all that stuff out. Now, Jeph, you wrote a book as well. I see it over your shoulder.
Yeah.
I wasn't relying on Eric to show it to everyone this time. So yes, that's my book, The Last Battle of the Revolution. It's a Daniel Boone novel. You can get it on Amazon. You can find me on social media, but not very much, at Jeph Winstead, because I'm trying to write my new book. So maybe that comes out later this year, we're hoping. And that's it for me.
That is it for all of us, except Eric Conner. I know you want people to be able to find you, so go ahead.
Do I? I don't know. If you do want to find me, Eric Conner, CONNER. And, always the little dog next to the big dog of Christian Bladt on his various podcasts that he allows me to roam.
That's true. I let you. I do try to put you in the sidecar, like on the Bat Cycle. So we appreciate that.
The Robin side of things.
As I said, my personal podcast, the Blattcast, BLADTCAST, and you can find me over there. And Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Who are these broadcasters on the Who Are These Podcasts network? When we're recording this, we're 1 day away from our 100th episode of that show, so we're very excited. But see us again here on Geekscape for the Geekscape Book Club for Fantastic Four Life Story, and I might weave another Fantastic Four story into that coverage, depending on once I've seen the movie. That is part of the problem when it's like, read these books before you see the movie. The one that I made sure not to do that with was Winter Soldier. I'm like, no, I'm going to read the Winter Soldier comics after I see the movie. And I was like, yep, glad I waited. So sometimes you wait for it. And the one pun is ready to see me tomorrow. So thank you. But that is all the time we have for now. And I realized I didn't actually sign off the other show, Eric. So I have to close the door on both
There's
shows.
people waiting for an hour and a half.
They're just waiting. We appreciate everybody, and as long as they keep writing them, we'll keep reading them. And as the great Stan Lee would say, Excelsior!